not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this morning. Discussing rape gangs is a little trumpet and a dog whistle. That's what Labour says, not just any Labour MP, the leader of the House of Commons, Lucy Powell. She's since apologised for that remark, but have Labour just revealed themselves? This comes as they have cancelled a redress scheme, a compensation scheme. We'll talk to a victim of grooming gangs. We'll also talk to the former number 10 advisor, now turned reform spokesman, Tim Montgomery, in regard to that, because he was taking part in the BBC Any Questions programme as Lucy Powell made those remarks. We'll hear them again in a second. It's a big scandal. She's apologised. We'll also ask Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, whether she should resign. We'll talk to the co-chairman of the Conservative Party as well about what on earth they do and how they regroup and attempt to take on the behemoth that is Reform UK. Nearly 700 councillors they have. They've done incredibly well in the council elections, and the mood is changing. The political landscape is changing. Their chairman, Zia Youssef, he's talking about the need for a moral re-education for young people. I wonder what you think about that. We'll talk all about that. We'll also talk to Stella Creasy, a rare interview on Talk. She's talking about abortion rights later on and the state of the Labour Party. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. I want to make sure that you get all your views across, including on VE Day, which is something that we're commemorating, of course, this week. There'll be a 2-minute silence on Thursday, and we'll speak to my favourite political and constitutional historian, Daniel Britton, about what's happening over the next few days and how we can participate and commemorate our heroes who gave us our freedom, and indeed the freedom to have stations like this, the home of common sense, the home of free speech, something we wouldn't have had they not laid down their lives for our country. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a voice note, a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What should I ask Wes Streeting? What should I ask the co-chairman of the Conservative Party? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. Tanya's been in touch already and says, morning Peter, morning Tanya. Please ask West Streeting if waiting lists are coming down partly because of booking and swiftly cancelling appointments. I hear this often on Talk. Streeting is doing the news rounds this morning promoting this success for Labour, but there's definitely a manipulation of the figures. Tanya, I'm going to keep that on the screen. Usually I unstar them and they disappear. I'm going to keep that on the screen to remind me to ask West Streeting that very question. And if you have any other thoughts, you know the ways to contact me. I've just told you Tanya's given me a very, very good question to ask West Streeting. Another question I'm going to ask him is about the scandal that happened on Friday night. Lucy Powell, his cabinet colleague, she is leader of the House of Commons. She was on Any Questions, the BBC discussion programme on Friday night. Tim Montgomery, who I'm going to talk to in a second, the former number 10 advisor turned reform member, he was on that programme as well, and they had this discussion. This is on Any Questions on Friday night. Just listen to this in regard to grooming gangs, or as we call them here, because that's their name, rape gangs. Have victims been betrayed? Has Lucy Powell revealed herself in regard to what Labour really think about this scandal? Just listen to this.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay.
There was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Okay, Lucy.
Yeah.
The councils, there were so many people who were so afraid for good. Can I just finish the point, just for 1 minute?
Finish that point, Tim, and then I'll bring in Helen.
Look, there were so many people in local government, in the authorities, who, for good reasons, were worried about upsetting community tensions, that those girls went undefended. Now, there were good reasons for it, but no one has still been brought to justice for that. So you tell me, Lucy, that this isn't a culture in local government. It's just not true.
Well, Lucy Powell clarified her comments in the heat of a discussion on Any Questions. I would like to clarify that I regard issues of child exploitation and grooming with the utmost seriousness. I'm sorry if this was unclear. I was challenging the political point scoring around it, not the issue itself. As a constituency MP, I've dealt with horrendous cases. This government is acting to get to the truth and deliver justice. That is what I called, as a spinner back in the days when I was a spinner, a non-apology apology. I'm sorry if this was unclear. I'm sorry if anyone is offended by this. Well, we'll ask West Streeting about that later on. She has since apologised further. Tim Montgomery is with me now. He was part of that discussion. Tim is a former number 10 advisor for the Conservatives, but has since joined Reform UK. Tim, I thought your point was perfectly reasonable. I thought Lucy Powell was completely out of order. Just tell us about how things have been and your reaction to this over the last sort of 24, 36 hours.
It's not been fun, I have to say, Peter. I've tried an approach. I think a few minutes ago you called me a reform spokesman. I'm definitely a reform supporter, but I'm not a spokesman. And sometimes I will criticise, reform, my own party. I used to criticise Conservatives when I was
Sure, apologies for getting that wrong, Tim. Yeah.
Audience... No, don't worry. But I mention it, Peter, because I think when you've got an audience like Radio 4 had, you treat them with respect. You don't just give them partisan lines. And I was trying to explain how there has been this culture in a lot of the public sector, well motivated because racial justice is important, but it became too powerful. It became almost an obsession for some people. And they became so worried about not upsetting community relations that they forgot that other incredibly, some would say, bigger responsibility of protecting very vulnerable children. I thought it was a perfectly reasonable point, and I thought it was a real shame that Lucy Powell, rushed to that racism card, because she almost used the exact same language that was warned against by the grooming, the big report that we had in Talk listeners. I think we've all had enough of constantly being accused of racism as a way of shutting down all sorts of debates. And Labour do not seem to have learned that lesson from how Lucy behaved on Friday evening.
And she really went for you properly. This wasn't a kind of, oh, Tim, actually, I think we should talk about it in this way. It was a proper attack on you for even raising it, for even asking her if she'd seen the Channel 4 documentary. And this, to me, I mean, we have another story today. Sky News have revealed a very, very interesting story in regard to child sexual abuse victims denied justice after a compensation scheme scrapped over the cost. This is a national redress scheme, one of the 20 key recommendations made by the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. A Home Office report revealing the government has scrapped it because of the cost. I think what we have seen, and I'm going to put this to Wes Streeting later on, I think what we have seen is not just Labour slipping up in regard to Lucy Powell's true feelings coming out of this, but we can judge them not just on what they say, but what they do or don't do on this, Tim.
Yeah. 100%. I wish you were on the panel with me on Friday night, Peter, making those sorts of points. And another one is, we know that there are 50, very sad, just giving you the number makes me shudder. 50 of our towns and cities in this country have had experienced the young girls in those towns and cities and of these you're right to say, not grooming scandals, raping scandals. 50. And the government said there would be local inquiries. They haven't happened.
Tim, we're struggling with the line slightly, so I think I'm just going to...
We can all be outraged.
We're just struggling with the line, so I think we're going to end it there, if that's okay. But listen, Tim, thank you for your thoughts there this morning. Really appreciate you coming on. Let's just hear that before I go to Ellie, who is a gang victim. I just want to, for people who might just be joining us this morning, I just want to play that clip one more time. This is Lucy Powell, the leader of the House of Commons, senior Labour person. She ran the election campaign in 2015. She's the leader of the House of Commons, and this is what she said. She's since apologised on the BBC on Friday night.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay.
There was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Okay, Lucy. Yeah. The councils, there were so many people who were so afraid for good. Can I just finish the point just for 1 minute?
Finish that point, Tim, and then I'll bring in Helen.
Look, there were so many people in local government, in the authorities, who, for good reasons, were worried about upsetting community tensions, that those girls went undefended. Now, there were good reasons for it, but no one has still been brought to justice for that. So you tell me, Lucy, that this isn't a culture in local government. It's just not true.
Dear. Mitch has been in touch and says apologies are cheap from these Labour MPs. They only do it when caught out and there's a backlash and it threatens their lucrative lifestyle. Love the show, says Mitch Phillips. Thank you for that, Mitch. I'm going to ask you the question this morning. Do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? Because we have those unguarded but public comments. This is a seasoned media performer, someone who was chosen by the Labour Party to go on a very high-profile programme on the BBC. Millions of people listen to it on a Friday evening. Any questions has been there for years and years and years. The Labour Party and the government will have decided to put out someone who is one of their best performers in their estimation, and that is what Lucy Powell said. So I'm asking you this morning, do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal, especially when that is their unguarded opinion, for which, I should say, Lucy Powell has apologised. Ellie Reynolds is with me now. She is a rape gang victim. Ellie, thank you for joining me this morning. I want to hear your story properly, but just firstly, I want to ask you, what is your message to the government, to Lucy Powell, after you hear that sentiment expressed on Friday night?
I think my message would be, you sound exactly like the people that go out and abuse. To downgrade, to dismiss, and it was just such a scummy comment. I honestly have no words for how degrading that is.
Ellie, thank you for that, and I think a lot of people share your opinion on that, and are in disbelief, actually. And what I would argue is that we know them by what they say and also by what they do. This National Redress Scheme, one of the 20 key recommendations made by the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, something that could give victims like you some redress, some compensation for what you went through, the government scrapped it because of the cost. What do you think of that?
I mean, like I've always said to many people, no amount of compensation, no amount of sorries, or we're going to try and fix it now, or No amount of money would ever take away the fact that the majority of us lost completely all of our childhood. We're never going to get that back, and I don't think anything's going to cover for that. But I think that people then purposely taking that away due to not enough funds, again, it's dismissive. It's unfair. But there again, everything that they seem to do, the authorities, the government, and Labour Party at the minute, seems to be a continuous cycle of unfair, ignore. It's basically just trying to keep a lid on us still and trying to silence us still.
Well, you'll not be silenced by this station anytime soon, Ellie. Just tell us what happened to you.
I was subjected to a predominantly Pakistani, Bangladeshi, actually mine were, rape gang for 5 years. I was 13 until 18. It consisted of me being drugged, trafficked, held hostage in flats and takeaways, gang raped multiple occasions, and it left me with lifelong illnesses of complex PTSD and some sort of confusion and unanswered questions by authorities of why they never did anything.
And those questions remain. How did you get into? How were you lured in, or trafficked in, or I mean, how did it start? Really, I suppose is my question, Ellie. How did that abuse start, and how old were you when it started?
I think that there's a lot of what's the word? Like, there's a lot of people that think that grooming just starts one way, and it's that, you know, men can give free drugs and drinks to teenagers and that's how you end up getting roped in. But there's a lot of a wider range as to how they do it. So I was 13 and I was in, you know, like a school time relationship. And my partner at the time, his family member was in a relationship with one of my main abusers. So I'd met him through families and being in a relationship with somebody. That abuser is now serving a life sentence, but for other people. So it's not just the case of grooming doesn't just start with giving somebody drink and drugs. It can start where you were like me and you'd met them through family and the next minute you're being taken off the street. Yeah.
What was life like for you? Did you have any control at all when this was happening? Did you have any agency over your life?
No. So before I was going through this, I was, you know, really happy. I was horse mad. I'd had my own pony from the age of 6. I had a wide variety of friends. I loved going out and doing stuff. And then when you get dragged into this, you completely lose your whole identity. So I was challenging. I then turned angry and nasty, and understandably now looking back at it was because I had a lot that I was going through, and I didn't think I could tell anybody. But my life completely shifted once I was involved with them, and I didn't care. I wasn't a nice person to be around. I was dealing with obviously very traumatic things that had an impact on me, family, friends, relationships. So the answer is life was great, and it's great now. But in that time gap, I'm surprised I made it out.
How did you make it out?
So one of the days I decided that I think something just clicked, and enough was enough. And I knew that my abuser, my main abuser, I call him, I knew that he had a child. And I think when you get to like a certain age, you just think, oh my God, like surely I'm not the only person that this is being done to. And at that point, because there was threats made to my family and my little sister, I thought about his child, and I thought, surely they wouldn't do it to their own. But I almost had that protective instinct where I really needed to say something in case something was going on. So I ended up turning up at his partner's house and saying, you know, I really need to speak to you. She ended up ringing the police for me. And she'd put me in the car and took me around to different places as well, and said, you know, show me where you've been with them.
So she actually ended up helping you?
I'd say 50-50 because she was very supportive at the start. She had reported it to the police for me. I did, I took my first statement at her house. She took me in the car. She'd made statements confirming everything that I'd told her. However, I do think that there was a little bit of a hiccup of a scare factor or something that's then happened because all of a sudden the statements were retracted and she didn't want anything to do with it anymore.
What do you want to happen now? What have you been calling for, Ellie? What do you want the government to do?
National inquiries, definitely. I think that local inquiries give us that. They're good, but a national inquiry would work better because these men don't just operate in one area. So let's take my main abuser, for example. He didn't just operate in Barrow, he operated in Leeds. He also had ties to Doncaster. So it's a wide variety, and I think if a national inquiry came out instead of local, it would problem solve a lot quicker.
Yeah. Ellie, I don't know what your morning is like, but if you've got time in the next 10 or 15 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to take a clip from you, from what you've said, and we're going to put it directly to the Health Secretary, Wes Reading, who I'm interviewing in about 10 minutes' time. If you want to watch that, that's up to you. But for the meantime, I really appreciate your time. That's Ellie Reynolds there, who is a rape gang victim who's spoken very, very bravely this morning, and thank you to her. What is your reaction to this, and do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? That is what we're asking this morning. 0344 499 1000. Will doesn't. Will says Lucy Powell's comment is exactly why so many people are voting reform. These politicians have got a high and mighty view and think we don't really understand, but the trouble is we do and they don't, says Will. JB says whoever the constituents are of Lucy Powell, they should petition for a by-election and get her out. Her comments were shameful, showing a complete lack of understanding. She is supposedly representing them, and I am sure most of them would be horrified by her comments. She needs to resign. Brad in Cambridge says more double standards from the BBC. Cammy Badenoch was grilled and ridiculed for not having watched Adolescence, the Netflix drama, but no assistance for Tim when he's asking Lucy Powell if she watched the Grooming Gangs documentary, says Brad in Cambridge. Ian in Hemel Hempstead, just finally before the break, says I think Lucy Powell just saved herself the trouble of writing a resignation letter with that verbal resignation. Labour have every intention of burying the scandal and moving on. This one is not going away. People like your guest Ellie deserve justice. Labour women don't seem to like real women. They have more time for women with a penis, says Ian in Hemel Hempstead. That's how people feel this morning. That's just 3 messages that we've received. There are lots more coming, and we'll make sure we get your voice on the air. We'll also hear the voice and see the image of Wes Reading, the Health Secretary. Plenty of questions for him coming up. Our debate desk is next too. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of people getting in touch, and thank you for doing so. There are just so many messages. Gary says, can you ask West Streeting why somebody is allowed to register with a GP without providing proof of identity or address? Surely it should be a fundamental requirement of the NHS that you prove who you are and establish that you're entitled to free healthcare before receiving it. On Lucy Powell, many messages about that. Do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? That's what we're asking this morning. John in Lincolnshire says, Lucy is not some backbench MP. She's the leader of the House, so her dismissal of this crisis, she needs to be sacked. Trevor's in Stevenage it says, can you ask Mr Streeting why they don't stop the French from fishing in our waters until they stop the immigrant boats from coming over? Michelle says, no, I don't trust Labour to help sort the rape gang scandal. They seem to have utter contempt for the working class and most of the UK. Dawn and Chelmsford, the rejection of a full-scale investigation by the government into the rape gangs is just bizarre. Lucy Powell's crass comments are just symptomatic of this ghastly government. On Twitter, one person says, Lucy Powell shows the true face of this hateful Labour Party. This Labour Party are protecting and covering up these Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. This Labour Party doesn't understand the anger of good, honest, ordinary, working-class British people. Jason in the Lake District says, I don't trust the government to do anything when it comes down to protecting English girls or citizens where Pakistanis or Muslims are connected. It's so obvious that they're terrified of upsetting them, and the fact the 5 independent MPs got in at the expense of the Labour MPs in 2014, and Angela Rayner seen on video begging Muslim men in a room to trust Labour to represent them, along with the Islamophobia laws being created, screams what Labour is about. Well, what do you think Labour are about? And do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? We've seen the local elections result. We've seen the verdict that some of Britain, not all of Britain, but some of Britain has delivered. Let's go to the debate desk now. Paul Richards is with me. He's a former Labour special advisor. Also Matthew Goodwin-Freeman. He's the political director of GetElected.uk and a Conservative councillor. And both of them are, I would imagine, quite tired. Paul,
yes,
Paul,
quite.
On a serious note about Lucy Powell,
yeah.
Many people very annoyed about this. Jane, for example, says, so it seems real life isn't important to Labour, but a Netflix drama is central to their policy making. Should Lucy Powell resign?
She shouldn't resign. I don't think it's a cabinet level resignation offence, but what she said shocked people. I was appalled by it. It was totally tone deaf and a very foolish thing to say, and that's why she's been, hauled over the coals by Number 10, and also she has now apologised for those remarks, and I think that should be the end of it, because she did a wrong thing and she's apologised for it.
But it's not the end of it. There's so many people who believe that's actually just the start of it. They believe that Labour has revealed themselves.
No, I don't think that's fair. I think she misspoke in the heat of a very long series
more
of
than
interviews.
Misspeaking.
No, I think so. That it was a.
Come on, Paul. She
is
a senior cabinet minister.
Yeah.
She is someone who is sent out. She's not meant to make these mistakes. West Streeting, who we're talking to in a few minutes' time.
I mean, it was a mistake, and that's why she's had to apologise for it, and why she's been, an interview without coffee, I suspect, with Number 10 as well. But I don't think we should have a cabinet resignation over this.
Matthew?
Well, the mask has slipped, hasn't it? This is just another string to the bow of Labour scandals and a litany of things since they came in. I do personally think she should resign. If she tweeted it, she'd probably have been arrested, given what other people were being locked up for last year. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This isn't a little trumpet. This is one of the biggest scandals in British history.
But if she did
resign... Hold on, let me speak, please.
Yeah, of course,
it's one of those things where we've seen how Labour watered down these inquiries on the last day of term in Parliament last session. I'm absolutely furious by this, because all we see is Labour calling, Angela Rayner calling Tories scum. We've seen the litany of things since Labour came into government, and they've been, taken over this government with a huge majority. They could deal with this tomorrow if they wanted to.
Well, that's a fair point, isn't it, Paul? They dealt with Scunthorpe in a day.
Well, look, there are 5 inquiries up and running. We've already had a national...
They're not, though. They're not.
Not statutory.
And there's also
watered
been
down.
A national inquiry already.
They won't tell us where they are. They won't tell us where the other one is.
And my question to Matt is, though, if she did resign, so there was a cabinet level resignation, later on today, how would that help the victims of the grooming gangs? How
It
would
might
that
make them
help?
feel a bit better. We spoke to Ali earlier on. She said it was a scummy comment.
How would? Yeah, well, she's not wrong. But how would that then pursue justice? How would that get anyone arrested? It wouldn't actually help the girls at all, would it? It would just be a political story for the bubble. But so what?
To answer your question, it would mean that this government is saying this is our standards that we are expected to get in by, and anything below that, you're gone. And that is exactly what Keir Starmer promised. He was going to have a government of integrity, and this is disgraceful.
Well, she's done a foolish thing, and she's apologised for it.
Okay, thank you both very much. I'm going to read out a couple more messages here. This person says apologies are cheap from these Labour MPs. Quite a few on health as well, obviously. West Streeting coming up in a second. We'll get a reaction from the debate desk on that as well. Jackie says, morning Peter, ask West Streeting how he can call the reduction of waiting lists a success when people are stuck on trolleys and corridors for days, losing their privacy and dignity with limited care when they are waiting to be admitted. Steve says, Lucy Powell's crass remarks show just how ignorant so many of these career politicians are of how real people in this country feel. She is another disgrace to politics and not fit to be called right honourable. Well, what does the Health Secretary think of this? We'll speak to him in a few minutes' time, and we'll stay with the debate desk as well, get their reaction to what he says. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Trevor in Harrow says, morning Peter, you can ask if we can trust Labour to conduct the rape gang inquiries. In my opinion, actually no, they can't. If anything, they want to cover it up, and I personally think it goes to the highest echelons within Parliament. I emphasise this as my own personal view. Trevor says, the NHS are getting waiting lists down by paying the private sector to take over the treatment and surgery of NHS patients on waiting lists. I know this because I was one of these patients. Leslie says, does Wes think doctors will receive the 50% pay rise they are demanding? Very good point, Leslie, just writing that down. And Vince says, Labour are obsessed about a Netflix fiction but happily dismissing a Channel 4 documentary. Vic says, please ask Wes Streeting, following the Supreme Court ruling, when he will return all NHS services to hospitals with single sex for both staff and patients, and he will return the Darlington nurses to their own changing room without men and vindicate nurse Jennifer Mell, who was, Mell I think is how you pronounce her name, who was marched off the premises and disciplined for calling a paedophile patient a man, which he is. Jane says, if this was a Tory, it would be gone already. Lucy Powell should be sacked today. Do you disagree, Paul?
Well, given what the Tories did in the last government, I don't think that's what would happen at all, actually.
Okay, Matthew?
No, I completely agree with that. So many times do I find things going on with Labour politicians, and you just think, if this was a Tory, they'd be gone tomorrow.
They certainly call for a lot of people to resign. Andy says, ask that fool Wes Streeting. Tell us what you really think, Andy. Since Labour have been in power, my appointment has been cancelled 5 times at an ear, nose and throat clinic to get my ears cleaned out. Not a major thing. I was told last week that the whole department was closed. That's a fair few people off the list. I rang the doctors and I'm in Specsavers on Tuesday. What a farce. Great show, says Andy. Thank you. Please ask Wes Streeting if Rayner's strike rule policy is a good policy when it makes it easier to strike, says Leslie. Loads of thoughts for Wes Streeting. We will speak to him in just a minute's time, but we're on the debate desk with Matthew Goodwin-Freeman and Paul Richards. Paul, what's your reaction to where Labour are after the local election results?
Well, it's interesting you're about to talk to Wes, because something like the health service and how people feel about local services, whether they're getting the treatment they need at the time they need it, is how governments are going to be judged. And so this election was obviously a chance to give the government a kicking over about 4 or 5 issues we can talk about that are very unpopular, from inheritance tax through to winter fuel allowance and all the rest of it. But at the general election, if the government can show that people's treatments are faster, if their satisfaction in the NHS is up to where it was in 2010 when I was working in the Department for Health, then that's how people will judge their government, and they'll be less concerned about things like migration if they've got money in their pockets and they feel a bit more economically secure themselves, and if their kids can get a house. So I think if you can deliver those things, and I'm sure that's what Wes will say, it's got to be about delivery over the period of this Parliament, then that's the point at which people will look again at Labour.
But surely the last few days have shown us as well that, yeah, OK, these issues, as you say, migration may be less of an issue or less seen as an issue, but sorting migration out has to be a priority now, in a way that I don't think it has been for Keir. Maybe you disagree, that it has been for Keir Starmer.
Well, he has focused on it, but I think that the issue was if there was a single simple thing we could do, then I'm sure the last Conservative government would have done it, and I'm sure this Labour government would have done it too. People say I'll put gunboats in the Channel, but I'm
not advocating that for a second.
But some people do. But my point is, there isn't a single thing you can do that stops this phenomenon. You have to have all these different things and push on all the different doors. From disrupting the gangs to stopping the boats getting even as far as the Channel. Dealing with the supply lines in Germany, working with the Belgians and the French. There's a number of things that you have to do, and public policy like this is difficult. It is difficult to do. Otherwise, we'd have done it.
Matthew, you're a bit knackered. You've been running a few campaigns in Leicestershire, I think. You won 2 out of the 3. You must be one of the very few people in the Conservative Party who has that kind of record. They've had a disaster over the last few days.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to repeat the party lines of, look, this was a high watermark for us from 2021 and the COVID bounce. The fact is...
Although you just have.
See what I did there. The fact is that these elections were a drubbing for both parties. We were running campaigns in North West Leicestershire and in Nottinghamshire, and we delivered the only Conservative victory in North West Leicestershire with my campaign company.
Well, good for you, but that is a sort of a match being lit in an ocean,
this
really,
is the problem. It shows that there is an existential crisis going on at the moment in politics. We are seeing Reform winning safe Conservative seats, safe Labour seats, absolutely changing the dynamics of politics. And what we've got to see is how the parties react to this, because what I really want to see is people talking about track record, getting out there and actually talking about, look, that
But if you talk about the Conservative track record, we'll get migration down 2010, we'll get migration down 2015, 2017, 2019, 2024. And look, local migration is a local election issue, and Reform are saying they're going to sort things out. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll see what they do. We'll hold their feet to the fire, as we do with every other political party here on Talk. But the point is that you got through and you did well in the 3 campaigns that you were managing, but that just didn't resonate at all. And over 600 Conservative councillors are gone. What happens now, and should Kemi Badenoch go?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, the Conservative Party needs to look at those victories and start listening and asking the question of how and why and what made the difference in those campaigns. We're only going to learn by looking in the mirror. And remember, last year at the general election, I ran the campaign in Harrow East. That bucked the trend, despite the exit poll giving us a 1% chance. So what I really want to see is the Conservative Party looking inwards, looking in the mirror and going, we can pick up results, we can win some elections, but we need to learn what's going on there.
The big picture, though, surely, is that the right is now completely split down the middle, and there are now 2 parties pretty much the same. Not in parliamentary terms, but, that's the big story.
OK, well, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is with us now. Wes, good morning.
Please roll down. Good morning.
I just want to... I spoke a little bit earlier on to Ellie Reynolds, who is a rape gang victim. I asked her what she wanted to say to you, and this is what she said. This is a clip of what Ellie Reynolds, a rape gang victim, said when I asked her, what message do you have for the Labour government? What is your message to the government, to Lucy Powell, after you hear that sentiment expressed on Friday night?
I think my message would be, you sound exactly like the people that go out and abuse. To downgrade, to dismiss, and it was just such a scummy comment. I honestly have no words for how degrading that is.
Wes Streeting, what would you say to Ellie Reynolds?
Well, I'm really sorry, and Lucy Powell has apologised for what she said on Friday night. I think she'd be mortified to hear that. And I know, having been in touch with Lucy last night, that she never wanted in any way to downplay, delegitimise or dismiss the experiences of victims of these appalling crimes. I've been in these sorts of debates before and panel shows. Sometimes in the heat of a debate you can say something or it can come across in a way you didn't intend, and later you really regret it. We're all human. I think Lucy made a genuine mistake and she's issued a genuine apology, and I'm very sorry to your viewer for the way in which she's felt as a result of hearing those comments. I think the reassurance I can provide is that the government is taking child sexual exploitation seriously, not just in terms of preventing future crimes from happening, which is important, but also giving more rights to historic victims to take their cases to an independent panel, where previously a time limit would have prevented them from doing so. We've actually asked every police force in England and Wales to look at every case where no further action was taken, to make sure that that was genuinely the right decision, and to make sure that victims haven't been forgotten, dismissed, or stones left unturned. There is so much more to do. I'll tell you what I worry. Take this extremely seriously.
I'll tell you what I worry about, Wes Streeting. I worry that Lucy Powell actually revealed herself there. I worry that the Labour government has revealed itself, because she is talking about it being a little trumpet, a dog whistle issue. The fact is that Sky News has revealed this morning that a national redress scheme, which was one of the 20 key recommendations made in the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, these are the recommendations that Keir Starmer keeps saying, we don't need an independent national inquiry, let's just implement these recommendations. A Home Office report is revealing that the government has scrapped it because of the cost. You're revealing yourself by what you say and by what you do.
I don't agree with that characterisation. For example, we know that through the work done by Alexis Jay and Louise Casey, that political correctness has sometimes been a factor in these crimes not going properly investigated and acted upon. That's one of the reasons why, in terms of collecting data, we're making sure that ethnicity data is better collected and recorded, and again, not just in terms of the future, but looking back at historic cases as well, so that we don't allow that kind of thing to happen. We are working through all of the recommendations of the independent investigation into child sexual
but you've rejected
abuse.
at least one of them. You've rejected at least one of them on the bounds of cost. You're not going to compensate them as the independent inquiry that it was done previously has suggested. You've decided not to do that.
Well, I haven't seen that Home Office report, and as I say, we are looking
why not?
through
It's a major story by a major network. You're out on the news this morning and you're not briefed.
Well, we are working through all of the investigations. Of course, where there are recommendations that come with significant costs, we have to make sure that we can fund those recommendations. But, we are, as I say, we are making progress. We have made progress since we've come into government. None of those recommendations have been acted on previously. We are working through them, and the steps we are taking, I think, will deliver what most want, which is real justice for victims. And I would argue, I know that people say we should have a national inquiry. There have been a number of inquiries. I actually think actions are louder than words, and the one thing that we can work hard to deliver is justice for victims and preventing future crimes from happening.
Just one more comment from a viewer. Will says, Lucy Powell's comment is exactly why so many people are voting reform. These politicians have got a high and mighty view and think we don't really understand, but the trouble is we do and they don't. don't the election results of the last few days vindicate Will's comment to us this morning? He understands, the voters understand, the over 600 councillors elected to reform, the barely 100 councillors elected for you. This result shows that Labour just isn't getting it.
We certainly take reform seriously and the reform threat seriously following Thursday's election results. I've been challenging Nigel Farage on the NHS, for example, who's said he thinks that those who can afford it should actually pay for their health care rather than through general taxation. I mean, that is an existential threat to the NHS, so we'll take them on the issues. But actually putting to one side the arguments for our opponents and just judging ourselves on our own terms and on the voters' terms, I totally get why. If I'm on you saying, oh, NHS waiting lists have come down 6 months in a row, which they have, and we've gone well over the 2 million more appointments that we promised in our first year. We're over 3 million. We delivered them early. Like, those things are all true. But if you're watching or listening this morning and you're still on an NHS waiting list, you won't have felt that change yet.
And
if the Chancellor was
money
on and she was saying that wages are going up faster than inflation, well, that's true, but you won't be feeling it in your pocket yet. So I think we feel the same impatience and frustration as the country, and we know that unless people feel change at the next election and see this government, as the Prime Minister said at the weekend, delivering on the cost of living, our border security and on the NHS, they'll look elsewhere.
But he's not, and that's why they are looking elsewhere. Tonya says if waiting lists are coming down partly because of booking and swiftly cancelling appointments. I often hear this on talk, says Tonya. Streeting is doing the news rounds this morning promoting the success for Labour, but she believes there's a manipulation of the figure. I wonder if you could tell me about the waiting list initiative, the WLI, and the amount and percentage of spend that has actually gone into the private sector as a result of that, Wes Streeting.
I can't remember off the top of my head how much we've spent through the independent sector, but as I've said before the election, this is the mandate we have. If I can get people seen faster through a private service up the road, as long as they're not paying privately, as long as they're getting it free on NHS terms, then I think that's both the pragmatic and the principled thing to do. Pragmatic because it gets people seen faster, principled because it means that those services aren't just open to those who can afford it, that the NHS is getting them seen faster. But on this broader point, so I should be really clear about the figures. We promised 2 million more appointments within our first year. We've already delivered well over 3 million. We got waiting lists falling during the peak winter pressures. Things are improving. It is moving in the right direction. Those are facts. But I also accept, and I think I've always tried to get this across. I think it's a bit that people don't always hear. I know that if you are still on a waiting list, you will be feeling frustrated. You won't have felt the change. And all I'd say to you is, both those things can be true at the same time.
Okay.
Waiting lists are falling. We are delivering on our commitments, but the waiting list was at record highs, and it will take time. And I understand why, if I'm cutting waiting lists, but you're not feeling it yet, why you will be feeling frustrated. I totally get that. So I'm going as hard and fast as I can to bring them down.
What are you actually doing inside the NHS to build capacity to actually reduce waiting lists?
Yeah, so it is the investment that the Chancellor announced at the budget, which will make a difference, but also the reform. So we've sent teams of top clinicians into areas with the highest levels of waiting and highest numbers of people off work, off sick, and reform the way their clinics work to improve productivity. We're actually seeing waiting lists falling faster in those areas. There's still early signs, but, you know, so far falling faster in those areas without any extra money. It's just reform ways of working. I was at my local hospital on Friday, King George in Goodmayes, where, again, thanks to a reformed way of working, they're actually significantly improving waiting times and boosting productivity. So it's the investment that matters, sure, but also the reform. That's how we're going to deliver results.
Wes, I know you've got to go, but I have two questions just quickly for you. One from Vic. Following the Supreme Court ruling, when will he return all NHS services and hospitals to single sex for both staff and patients?
Well, new guidance will be issued before the summer. In terms of the single-sex spaces, I mean, beyond the issue of gender identity, I mean, this has been a challenge for a while. We've had lots of breaches. There are resource constraints. Again, I'm going as hard and as fast as I can because I understand why single-sex spaces are so important.
Just finally, how will you be commemorating VE Day, Wes Streeting?
I will be in my own constituency. We've got a memorial event taking place at one of our local war memorials, so I'll be there this week. And if you let me off your programme, I'm going back to my constituency where we've got a street party going on as well.
I'll let you go to that. Thank you, West Riding Health Secretary. Appreciate you joining us this morning. I find that really, really interesting that the Health Secretary doesn't know what he's spending on the private sector. That was just astonishing that he didn't have that figure or any idea about that figure. This is the station, Talk is the station where you text things in, you send us a message, and then we put them to the people running this country. No other network does that. We do it here. We're going to continue doing it on this show. That's why we want the viewer and listener, your voice, to get to the very top of government. I've taken as many questions as I can from viewers and listeners, and thank you for them. What's your reaction to that interview? Let us know. And do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? I'm asking you, and I'll be asking Matthew and Paul on our debate desk in just a second. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you for all your reaction to that interview, including Mary in County Down. He says the Health Secretary doesn't know what he's spending on the private sector. Really? That's not believable. The private sector is a key pillar of this initiative in regard to dealing with the private sector. Mary's right with that. People have a right to know how much taxpayers' money is going to the private sector. And remember, it's often NHS surgeons doing private work. OK, well, what we're going to do right now, Chris, producer, is going to contact the Department of Health and Social Care and ask them how much taxpayers' money in the last financial year, well, actually, no, how much money in the time since Labour has been in government has gone into the private sector. We'll bring you that answer either before 1 o'clock or I will tweet it out later on. A couple of other messages. West Streeting does not know how much is spent in the private sector. I'm speechless, says Joe in the Wirra Forest. Susan says, oh dear, Peter, Streeting is really sorry. Lucy Powell is sorry. Not good enough. That was not a genuine mistake. The mask slipped. She needs to go. The police are checking their own homework. Not good enough either. This should not be down to cost. We appear to have unlimited funds for illegal immigrants and none for these child victims. Paul Richards is on the debate desk.
On the use of the private sector, we used to say it should be no more than 10% of the total budget. So I don't know what the current figures are, but it should be something around that. For every £10 spent, it should be £1 on the private sector. But the idea of the private sector use is to get the waiting list down. You know, there should be things like cataracts, things like knee operations, should be much faster.
Okay.
And farming it out to independent sector is a way to achieve that for people.
Matthew, what do you think about that interview?
I genuinely don't know what to say. How can the health secretary not know how much something is costing in the health department? I mean, did he not?
He does now, doesn't he?
Well, hopefully someone's had a word down the ear and said, listen, Wes, this is how much. I mean, does he not want to admit that maybe the money's coming from cutting benefits? Does he not want to admit that maybe money's coming from cutting winter fuel payments? I mean, frankly, he's the health secretary. He should know the answers. He's had a real mess up there.
On the grooming gangs, rape gangs, we'll get back to Paul and Matthew on that, but I just want to take a call. First call today from Dan in Liverpool, 0344 499 1000. Dan, what do you make of this?
I think it's an absolute utter disgrace, and I think Jess Phillips has made herself Andrew Tate's #1 fanboy by cancelling these inquiries.
They say they're going to go ahead. They say the Oldham inquiry is happening and there are going to be 4 more that happen. But when you hear Lucy Powell's comments, what do you think, Dan?
I think it's disgusting, and when they do say they're going to do the inquiries, it's the exact same as when they said they wouldn't touch the winter fuel allowance, they were going to help the Wall Street women. It's lies, lies and lies with this government. And there's people who think, oh, well, vote Labour, vote Conservative. The Conservative Party needs to die, unfortunately. Reform's going to win, and we need change in this government now.
Dan, thank you for your thoughts. That's Dan in Liverpool there. Just on the grooming gangs aspect of that, I've interviewed Wes Streeting many, many times. I'm not talking about my own interviewing. I'm not saying I'm a great interview. All I'm saying is those answers are the most contrite I've ever seen him. What was your thought, Paul?
Well, I think he is genuinely upset by what Lucy Powell said, and his
maybe he knows she's going to get sacked.
No, I don't think so. But I think his contrition is genuine because the things that she said
I'd
were
be furious if I was
wrong.
Wes Streeting.
Well, behind the scenes, I'm sure he is, you know. But I don't think we're going to get a cabinet level resignation over it. But I do think that there is a sense that that was just tone deaf, and she she did apologise, and we do now need to show the public. People, you know, your correspondent there in Liverpool said, oh, they're not going to do the inquiries. I mean, we've got to now show that these 5 inquiries are taking place and will get results. But more importantly, we would need arrests, and we need court cases, and we need these people banged up.
Well, that can happen, and isn't it the case that, you know, we saw with Scunthorpe, for example, these things can happen very, very quickly. They, you know, they can pass all that legislation in a day. They could do so much more on this.
Labour have a massive majority, one of the largest majorities in British history. They could do this tomorrow if they wanted to. They've managed to find money from everywhere else.
Conservatives didn't do much better, Matthew.
And we're not in government anymore. That's the point. We are not the government anymore. We got our racking last year.
Why did the Tories not do it?
I'm not a member of Parliament. I'm not I'm not responsible. The fact is that the Conservative Party are not the government anymore. Labour are with a huge majority. They could do this tomorrow, but once again, they've got their finger off the pulse. It is the massive issue that people in this country care about. People in this country care about it. Family, community, culture. That is what people are caring about. And this Labour government has a humongous majority and could deal with this tomorrow and isn't. I can only apologise for what the Conservative Party didn't do, but we're not in charge anymore. You guys are. Do something. Stop talking words. Words are cheap.
OK, thank you both very much. That's Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, who's political director of Get Elected UK and a Conservative councillor, and Paul Richards is former Labour special advisor. I think you're hanging around for us, which is very kind of you. A little bit longer than usual because Nigel Huddleston is coming up. He's the co-chairman of the Conservative Party. Whither the Conservatives, I think, is the question that we can ask over the last few days. Certainly Reform are doing very, very well. Let me know your thoughts on all of this.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. If you missed the last hour, go back and watch it at some stage later today. I'm telling you, we had Wes Streeting on. He didn't know how much the health department pays for private healthcare. He was also very contrite about Lucy Powell. She is the leader of the House of Commons, and she is the one who said that talking about rape gangs was a little trumpet and a dog whistle in a BBC discussion programme on Friday night. Lots of people contacting us about that. We're going to talk to Nigel Huddleston in a minute. He's the co-chairman of the Conservative Party. What on earth do they do now? Should Kemi Badenoch still be their leader? How do they square up to Reform, deal with them in any way? Reform, of course, have done incredibly well over the past few days. Nearly 700 councillors now. They've control of 2 mayoralties. They've a new MP as well. She'll be introduced on Tuesday. That's Sarah Pouchin. Lots to discuss this morning. We're talking about VE Day as well. We're talking about the health service. We're talking about whatever you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell, and remember the main number does 3 things. You can send me a voice note, keep them to less than a minute, otherwise Tech Up Dave gets angry. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. Tim in Halifax says, I believe the rape gang scandal is so huge, involving senior police, councillors, social services, maybe even MPs, that the fallout will be devastating. They will avoid proper inquiries at all costs. Do not let this go. We need to keep pushing and pushing, says Tim in Halifax. Well, there are inquiries, Tim. There are local inquiries. The government is committed to that, but have they done the right thing? And should there be a national inquiry? Well, that's what I think should happen, but other people think that differently. Let me know your thoughts, as I say. Do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? Rowena says, what a brave young woman you talked to earlier. That was, of course, Ellie Reynolds, who put that question to Wes Streeting. I asked her, what would you say? And he did seem genuinely ashamed of what Lucy Powell had said. She has apologised, let's be clear on that. Rowena says, what a brave young woman. Hope she has a better life in the future. But with Lucy's comments basically dismissing what happened to these young women, that just shows what Labour MPs really believe. The government won't do anything about the rape gangs with ministers like her in power. It's strange. Joanna from Salisbury says, hi Cardi P. People under pressure say what they really mean. Lucy Powell would not have said it if she didn't think it. She needs to resign. Karen says if the word if is put in an apology, it is not a sincere apology. Lucy Powell should resign now. Taff in Dover says, in regard to Wes Streeting, you should have asked him if you have access to all the government accounts before you came to power. You said you had a fully costed manifesto. Why have you added so much extra in taxes? Nick in Kent says, according to Paul Richards, politicians can say anything if they just apologise. He and the Labour government are so deluded if they think the British people will just accept their words. Just look at the local elections, says Nick in Kent. Paul, do you want to respond to that? Paul Richards, I should say, former Labour Special Advisor, and Matthew Goodwin-Freeman are with me, Political Director of Get Elected UK, a Conservative councillor. Paul, have you any thoughts on that?
Well, I think Wes Streeting put it well when he said Lucy is human and she made a mistake and she's apologised. And in life that sometimes happens, doesn't it? And I don't think you should, people seem to think that they knew what she was thinking when she said it.
She knew what she was thinking when she said it.
Well, I don't think she did. I think she misspoke after 72 hours of no sleep and now she's really regretting it.
She's a cabinet minister.
Yeah,
she's national media.
She made a mistake.
OK. She certainly made a mistake. Lorraine is in Northern Ireland and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Lorraine, whereabouts are you in Northern Ireland? I don't just like saying Northern Ireland. Whereabouts are you?
In Bangor.
Bangor, OK. And what's your view, Lorraine?
I think it's absolutely disgusting, so it is. Lucy Powell should be drummed out, and every politician in Labour should be drummed out because they're a disgrace to the country.
She says she's apologised, Lorraine. Do you not accept that apology?
Absolutely not. True colours.
OK.
True colours. And as regards to women gangs compensation, David Lammy the other day handed 101 million to Palestine, and we all know where that's going. That's going straight to Hamas. They all say they've no money. It's all they're riddled with paedophilia.
I hope absolutely none of that money goes to Hamas, Lorraine. I'm sure there are safeguards to make sure, or to attempt that it doesn't, but inevitably it will, or some of it will, Lorraine. Yeah, Lorraine. I just wonder. I mean, to me, you mentioned the 101 million. You mentioned the Palestinians, and it's really interesting that I think, we remember the Scunthorpe blast furnace. We remember the problems there. When they want to, Labour can use their massive majority, the huge power that Keir Starmer has as Prime Minister, to do things quickly. They're not doing things... Go ahead.
They won't do it. There's not one of them with a pair of goalies, to be perfectly frank.
I mean, they've said, Lorraine, that they're going to sort out the rape gangs. They've said that they're going to do 5 local inquiries.
They're absolutely full of it.
OK.
Absolutely full of it. They've done absolutely nothing. As regards migration, they should stop money to anybody coming in on a boat from now on, and then sort out what's already here, who shouldn't be here and who are here illegally. It's not fair on the people.
OK. Lorraine, thanks for your thoughts there in Bangor in Northern Ireland. I appreciate that. Brad in Cambridge says, I'm on a waiting list for an essential operation. You should have asked Wes Streeting why I received a letter from the hospital asking me if I still needed the operation. If I didn't respond, they would remove me from the list. Brad in Cambridge there. Brad, I'm sorry to hear that you're on that waiting list, and I hope you're okay. I hope you get that operation soon. That must have been very annoying to get that letter. Steve says, watching Lucy Powell on numerous occasions, I fear these girls will never get justice. The politicians clearly couldn't care less, far too interested in keeping certain groups and potential voters happy. Betty says, it's amazing the difference a few months of a red box and ministerial perks changes someone. That Wes Streeting robot is not the same guy we saw pre-election. They will do a Kamala Harris and the UK will go the way of Trump. Susan says, Streeting is really sorry. Lucy Powell is sorry. Not good enough. That was not a genuine mistake. The mask slipped. She needs to go. Lisa says, I like how Wes Streeting reiterating the word reform and needing reform. Yes, we do. We need reform UK. Sean in Bridlington says, West Reading is telling the truth but not the whole truth. How many of those 3 million appointments were cancelled shortly after being made and the patients put on a new waiting list? Smoke and mirrors. Rachel says, we text a question and it's immediately put to the actual health secretary. How freaking amazing is talk about as amazing as Reform UK, says Rachel. Thank you for that. Derek says, holding West Reading to account was good. He's a fair operator and better than Starmer. I think he toes the party line but needs to show more conviction regarding the rape gangs. Labour, as everyone more or less thinks, are terrified about doing everything against their Muslim vote. Look at the rape gangs, look at Stockport, look at Manchester Airport. Neil in Wales says, I don't trust Labour at all. Just look at Wales. I don't trust Labour at all. Just look at Wales. We are first in everything for being the worst at everything. People who voted Labour have voted to destroy the UK and be worse off. Well done in the interview, says Neil in Wales. Let me put that to Paul Richards, actually. I will come to you, Matthew, I promise. But Wales is going to be fascinating, actually. Not often people say that, in regard to the politics of the next year, because both Wales and Scotland are probably going to see huge changes, maybe even Reform UK running Wales in some way. How scared should Labour be, especially after being in power for 25, 26 years since devolution, Paul?
Well, it's a fair point that Reform may well break through in this particular election in Wales, but they'll have had a year of running big chunks of England by then, so we will see what's happening in places like Lincolnshire and elsewhere where there are mayoralties, but also lots of councils now being run by Reform, because that's how the judgment should come. Have they managed to marshal public resources and use them well and deliver the things that people want or not? And I think by the time the Welsh elections come round, slogans are not going to cut it. There will be Reform councillors who have to show what they've actually done by then.
How worried are the Tories in Wales, Matthew?
Well, I think this is the problem. The Conservative Party has got to get on with rebuilding and regaining trust in the public. Everyone's talking about it. We've seen Conservative councillors who've lost their seats doing the hard graft on the local level lose their seats. We've got to look in the mirror and rebuild. We need to learn the lessons from those seats that won, learn the lessons from those seats that bucked the trend, and actually start building this party up again. Because if not, the Conservative Party is on a very, very slippery slope. We've seen people willing to vote Reform in the safest of Conservative seats, in the safest of Labour seats. The public are furious. And I just want to say to that caller, Lorraine, I completely get it. She's fed up, she's furious, and that is the mood out there in the public that politicians are not realising. That's got to change.
Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Paul, appreciate you being in the studio this morning. Matthew Goodwin-Freeman there, Political Director of GetElected.uk. He's a Conservative councillor as well. And Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor. Appreciate you being with us this morning. It's a really, really interesting time politically, and we're going to talk to the co-chairman of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, in just a minute. He is also the MP for Droitwich, Evesham and the Villages. We will get his thoughts on whether the Conservative Party. I want your thoughts too. 0344 499 1000. Plenty to talk about between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk.
I think it's... The thing is this, if he was coming over to visit his father, the king, he would get royal protection because he'd be going to the royal estates. So he would be absolutely fine. If he was coming to do proper business, like a state visit, although he's not a working royal anymore, again, there are provisions made from that. But he decided to go be a private citizen in a different country. So if he can now demand legally to have armed protection, then what's stopping Beyonce from doing the same? What's stopping Richard Gere from saying he needs the same? I need my people to carry guns. And he wants the tax, well, he doesn't want the taxpayer to pay for this. He said, well, I would pay you back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Benny in Belfast says the texter who received a letter asking him if he needed his operation, yeah, that was Tad in Cambridge there. That's absolutely standard practice in the NHS. It has been for years. Trusts frequently verify lists by checking that patients haven't gone privately and therefore don't need the NHS operation anymore. Trusts also run mega clinics to examine people and see if they're ready for surgery. On a long list, people have sometimes deteriorated or developed other illnesses and now aren't suitable for the original surgery. The NHS needs to explain this better to patients. Well, I think you're absolutely right, actually. And it's interesting that, you know, even within that letter, if they even said that, if they just said what Benny has said to me in that text there, if they just put that at the top of the letter and just said, like, we're just checking this, well, Tad would understand, and that single paragraph would have helped Tad and answered his questions there. Billy Joe on Twitter says what Lucy Powell said is so serious that she warrants immediate removing from the government, utterly offensive, and the hurt this must have caused to the victims of the grooming gang scandal is unforgivable. Her position is completely untenable. We're asking the question this morning, do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal, especially in light of Lucy Powell's comments? Maggie says, what absolute rubbish, for want of a better word, Wes Streeting is spouting about Nigel Farage and the lies of what he intends to do with the NHS. Once again, Labour are gaslighting us. Stop treating us as if we don't know what's going on. Steve in Cumbria, Labour's insurmountable problem is that they have done too much damage as too many groups of people, pensioners, farmers, waspy women, rape gang victims, that nobody believes a word they say anymore. A massive loss of trust. Ruth in Worcestershire says, you missed a trick regarding Streeting. Cancelled appointments imply that people have been treated. When they're rebooked, it looks as if new patients are being seen. It's blatant fraud, says Ruth in Worcestershire. Adrian says, for Wes Streeting to say he doesn't know how much is spent on private health means he is either incompetent or lying. Well, we have asked the Department of Health. Chris, the producer, has been in touch. If we get an answer before the end of the programme, I will tell you. We're here until 1 o'clock today. And when we get an answer, which we will, hopefully, from the Department of Health, I'll tweet that out. So follow me on Twitter, @Peter Cardwell. Karen says, I had my mammogram appointment cancelled because of technical issues. I was standing by the centre when the text came through and women were having their mammograms. I was off the figures, says Karen. It amazes me, says this person, the double standards of Labour. Liz, the comments, I think, of Lucy Powell are disgusting. She should be sacked. We got rid of a Prime Minister for eating his birthday cake. Thanks to Labour, they've locked people up for tweeting words, yet she is allowed a pass. But we didn't just get rid of a Prime Minister for eating a birthday cake. There were lots more things happening there, and he was breaking his own rules. So, but I know what you mean. I know what you're getting at. We'll talk to Nigel Huddleston in a second. He's co-chairman of the Conservative Party. Let's speak to Anne now. She's in Surrey and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Anne, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good morning, honey. The thing about the rape gangs, anyone would think this was a new thing and it's only Bangladeshi or Pakistanis and it's only in this area of that city and that area of that city. Speaking from personal experience, I can guarantee that the authorities, the police, social services and various comprehensive schools in Croydon, Lambeth, Lewisham, Sutton, Merton and Bromley knew about similar situations from the 1970s that were actually run by Jamaican and African gangs.
Okay. We haven't got their view on that. We can't just immediately get comment from them on that, Anne. But you said you're talking from personal experience?
Yes.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Anne. When you see this being brought up in the media, at least, is it helpful in some way to know that now maybe it's being taken more seriously than it was?
Well, it's all just a joke. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing ever happened in the first place. Nothing ever will happen. There will be tokenism from politicians, but we live with it. You have to live with it. You can't get rid of it. It's happened. You just live with it. You're not going there. Nobody's going to protect the next generation. Nobody did anything for us.
In as much as you want to, Anne, and maybe you don't want to talk about it at all, and that's fine, can you tell us what happened to you?
Well, you're a teenage girl at school, say 12 or 14. 1970s Britain, 1970s London, South London. And you get on with various people in your school, and you know that a couple of years older than you, there is a particularly handsome mixed race, he's half Jamaican, guy who's very popular and everybody knows him. And anyway, him and his friends suddenly take an interest in you and a couple of your friends. Well, I'll skip the more unpleasant details and get straight to the bit where you are sort of, in your mind, you're dating him.
Yeah.
And you know that his best friend, who we'll call Mickey, Mickey's just broken up with his girlfriend Tracy, and he's really upset. But he's always liked you. And, you know, if you could censored, you know, but no, I won't be jealous. I won't be jealous. Of course I love you. Of course I love you. But, you know, he's always, and he's really upset. And, you know, and anyway, and he'll take you out.
And that's how it started. Or that's what happened.
Yeah. And the next thing you know, well, ta-da!
Yeah.
And it happened. It wasn't just in South London. It wasn't just young, mixed, mainly Jamaican. It wasn't just. It was African. These were. There were some. Oh God! In North London, around Seven Sisters, on one particular estate there in Seven Sisters, that was run by young Jewish males.
I am really sorry. I've got to talk to the co-chairman of the Conservative Party. Can we ring you back in a few minutes' time and talk more? Because I want to have a better conversation with you, and I'm really sorry about this. It's just this guy has to do this interview now. Can we ring you back in about 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'm good.
Thanks, Anne. We'll talk to you in a second. I do apologise for this. And it's not Nigel Huddleston's fault. He's got a lot of different interviews to do today, and we will talk about this, but I promise you we'll come back to Anne. Nigel Huddleston is co-chairman of the Conservative Party. Nigel, thank you for joining me this morning. You've had a very, very bad few days in regard to over 600 councillors being lost for the Conservative Party. What went wrong?
Well, actually, before we get on to that, can I just say apologies for interrupting that, because I was listening to that. That was a pretty harrowing story on a really important issue.
I appreciate you saying that, Nigel. It was my decision. Don't worry about it. We'll go back to Anne. Yeah. It's not you're not to be held to account at all. I totally appreciate that comment, though, and I'm sure Anne does too. We'll go back to her in about 10 minutes. But yes, if you could answer the question, Nigel.
Yeah, so look, we knew this was going to be a difficult set of results because, you know, a lot of political commentators are aware of this, if not in the public arena, that we're actually having these elections on cycles over 4 years. And the last time we had this set of elections was back in 2021. And as you put your mind back then, this was the vaccine bounce. We were polling in 40-something%.
It was peak Boris, wasn't it?
It was peak Boris, and therefore the cycle several years, and we won an unprecedented 65% of the seats back in 2021. So to be honest, we knew that was a high and we were going to lose. How many seats we lose was always up for debate, and we were hoping to win more. But look, we also took a real battering at last year's general election. We lost 2/3 of members of parliament. We're down to just 121 of us, and we're still in the process of recovering, both as a party, but also our reputation and our brand and trust and confidence in the British public, in us as a party. That's not going to happen overnight. And also some of the issues people were talking about on the doorsteps for local elections still were related to last year's general election.
They always are, though, Nigel, aren't they? I mean, it's never,
I've never
just about bins and potholes, is it?
No, it isn't always, but in many elections, actually, it often is. Actually, this one I've never sensed. And by the way, I've been a councillor myself and fought many local elections. This time, the national issues, in particular, immigration, still came up again and again and again. And many Reform voters were saying, look, I wanted to send a message to the two main parties. Now, I get that, and it's perfectly up to the British public to choose whatever criteria they wish to assess on how they choose to vote. But the shame and the disappointment for me and many Conservatives was we were delivering really good services in these councils. We had really good councillors embedded in their local communities. We ran the councils efficiently and delivered low tax. Now, many of these councils now have Reform councils, and we'll be holding them to account now to make sure that they're as good as our councils were. And therefore, it is disappointing. But I'm not going to pretend it was a good night. It was also a terrible night for Labour.
And we'll see what Reform, we've spoken to them about that, and we'll see what Reform UK do. But Nigel, I just wonder, do you really get this? Do you understand that this is a serious realignment of politics? And when Nigel Farage says we're the opposition in this country, I mean, look, they have 5 MPs. Nobody says the DUP is the opposition in this country. But Reform have got another MP, they've got 2 mayoralties, they've got over nearly 700 councillors now. This is not a blip that can be explained away. The glory days of the Conservative Party in 2010 aren't coming back anytime soon. Do you get that?
I do get that we're in a very serious situation requiring serious leaders and serious time and serious action.
Is Kemi Badenoch a serious leader? She hasn't done very well in the last 6 months.
Look, Kemi was elected leader 6 months ago by the members of the party. And she said all along that we need to make sure that we don't rush out there and give simple answers to make ourselves popular to really complex questions.
Has she given any answers? Has she said anything about what she would do as Prime Minister?
Well, yes, she had, actually. I'm going to try and answer some of your previous questions before I come on to the latest one. You've asked about 3 or 4 now. Look, the key thing is that Kemi has said all along, we will make sure that we don't just make glib announcements for the sake of it, for the sake of being popular, because our party's credibility and trust and confidence is at stake. And therefore, policy developments and policy process, because we've got 4 years until the next general election, will take time. And I think that is a credible and sensible approach. In the meantime, where we can make announcements with confidence because we've got the full information and knowledge there, we are doing so. And we have done, for example, including on immigration, on the changes that were proposed to the cap and indefinite leave to remain and the legal processing system about the application.
But just on immigration, Nigel.
So as I said,
okay.
Yeah, can I just go back? So look, on those things, I take that seriously.
Okay.
But on the other point you raised, I'm going to try and take some of your questions in turn.
Okay.
You also asked about other things. Look, the important thing is that we position ourselves as a credible alternative government. That means taking our responsibility as His Majesty's opposition to account. And we've been holding Labour to account, by the way, and we're the only ones holding Labour to account in the Chamber of House of Commons.
You don't think Reform UK are holding Labour to account?
No, they're throwing their bombs all over. They seem to be obsessed. They seem to be obsessed with us.
Well,
and they are making comments that do chime and resonate with the British public. We're aware of those issues and concerns as well. But as a responsible opposition, you also need to put policies in place, credible alternatives, not just identify, oh, look at all these issues and concerns.
But you also need to say, what would you
do about it?
But you've just said in terms of credible policies that over the last 6 months there haven't actually been policies from Kemi Badenoch. That's been deliberate, and surely if people
I just did answer you. No, she's announced policies on net zero. We've announced policies on immigration. We've announced already that we would reverse the family farm tax and many of Labour's terrible tax measures. We would absolutely get rid of the employment bill. It's not fair or realistic to say that we have not put policies in place.
Fair enough.
And as to the point on the opposition, you are right. There are 5 Reform MPs now. There's 121.
They're punching a lot above their weight.
They've now got several hundred councillors. We've still got 4,000. So that is a ridiculous comment.
Along with the fact that, you talk about immigration there, you talk about a new policy on immigration, you talk about how the Conservatives need to be credible. In 2010, you said you'd lower immigration. In 2015, you said you'd lower immigration. In 2017, you said you'd lower immigration. In 2019, you said you'd lower immigration. In 2024, you said you'd lower immigration. You didn't. And why should they believe you now?
Yeah, because this is a really difficult area to cover. And we apologise for not delivering on those promises. Wholeheartedly, we apologise for that. We made mistakes in government. But I also think it shows how difficult it is to tackle these issues. We had the Rwanda programme, and we were facing a barrage of all the forces against us in order to implement that. But at least we did have a deterrent policy, and it was working. Even the deterrent element of it was working. Labour have thrown that out the window now. And Reform keeps saying, we will turn back the boats. By the way, in terms of credibility, leaflet after leaflet for these local elections, Reform put, vote for us in your council in order to stop the boats. Quite what they think a local councillor is going to be able to do on these issues, I do not know.
But was an issue that many people cared about? I mean, they may not...
It is an issue, and we said that as well, but the local elections need to be about the bins and the local concerns and the local issues. And what they were doing deliberately and consciously and successfully is deliberately trying to make sure they mixed up the national and local messaging.
I'm sure the Conservative Party would never, ever have done that.
Well, I think if you look at our literature, it's like, look what we will do for the local community, look what we will do for your taxes, look what we will do for your bin collection.
I think there's maybe a few aspects of the national record that may have been on those leaflets previously.
But we didn't promise that by voting for local councillors you would solve these local issues. Reform did, and that is actually, I'm afraid to say, deceitful.
2 more questions, Nigel.
But we will hold them to account for all the things that they promised in their leaflets. And we'll see how they deliver.
2 more questions, Nigel. 1, should Lucy Powell resign? If so, why?
I'm afraid she probably should, because it betrays a lack of understanding of the scale of the problem and an accusatory attitude that we get from people on the left, that anybody who raises issues and concerns like rape gangs is exaggerating. Nobody's exaggerating here. Your previous caller, Anne, was also talking about these issues. I think Labour do not understand the scale of the issue or the awesome responsibility that they should have as the government to do something about it. It is quite clear now, in a way that I don't think we understood even a few years or even months ago, the scale of the problem. We're now talking about potentially 50 towns and cities really facing extensive rape gangs. And we now have to get to the bottom of this. And that absolutely requires, a national inquiry, a national public inquiry, which is why we've been calling for it. Others have as well, but Labour just do not seem to get this. And a few weeks ago, they promised, we're going to do a few more inquiries. They've already backtracked on that. And therefore, it is symptomatic of the lack of understanding of the seriousness of this issue taken by many people across this country, but in particular the public. And as I said, look, we've learnt this lesson. If you don't listen to the public, you're in trouble.
Okay, final question. VE Day commemorations. What are you doing? What will Kemi Badenoch be doing? Why is it important to remember the sacrifices our heroes made?
Because none of us would be here today enjoying the freedoms that we do, including democracy, being able to vote, if it wasn't for people who literally gave their lives and sacrificed so much so long ago. And we should never forget that. And of course, we're still facing wars and turmoil today. But VE Day is important also because some of the people we will be commemorating with probably won't be around for much longer, is a harsh reality. And therefore, we need to show respect to them. I will be in my constituency for a good chunk of the day in Droitwich and other areas, commemorating with my constituents. And Kemi has various appointments as well. And I do think it's important, those of us with civic responsibilities, that we are out there and show support, that we are with the public in these important days. And I think anybody who's dismissive about these things, and we've seen, for example, Lib Dem councils cancel some of the VE Day commemorations because they're supposedly elitist, they are on the wrong side of history on this one, and shame on them.
Nigel, totally agree with you on that particular point. Nigel Huddleston there, co-chairman of the Conservative Party, talking about the freedoms we have, including the freedoms to have the home of free speech and to have the free speech that you have. Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. As promised, we'll get Anne and Surrey back on the phone and have a proper chat with her after the break. I'm sorry I had to do that. That wasn't Nigel Huddleston's decision. That was my decision because he was only free during that time. And Anne, we will talk to you properly after the break. Let me know your thoughts too. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who sent in voice notes. You can do this by using WhatsApp to send me a voice note, 0344 499 1000. We'll have loads more before 1 o'clock when the show ends. But let's have Debs first. Debs has sent us this voice note.
Morning, Peter. Debs in County Durham here. What a brave girl Ellie is. You know, you woman, sorry, but, you know, she was a brave girl back then. As a victim survivor myself, I like to look at myself as a survivor. We need this national inquiry. Too many politicians are playing around like they're playing with a ball on a schoolyard here, Peter. It is just not good enough. Everybody who was involved covering up needs to be held accountable to learn lessons from it. The only way lessons are learned is when punishment is given.
Thank you, Debs, and I'm sorry to hear that you were a victim too. I do appreciate you getting in touch. The reason we're talking about this, we often talk about rape gangs on this station because not enough is being done. The government needs to do a lot more than it's done. The Conservatives failed, Labour are now failing. And Labour are failing because of what they've done, and this is specifically in regard to the National Redress Scheme, one of 20 key recommendations made by the Independent Inquiry on Child Sexual Abuse. A Home Office report revealing, as Sky News have reported this morning, the government has scrapped that because of the cost, but also because of comments made by a senior Cabinet Minister, the leader of the House of Commons, Lucy Powell. This was on the BBC on a programme called Any Questions on Friday night. Let's just remind ourselves of what she said about rape gangs.
If anyone who saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this...
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay.
There was a real issue...
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Okay, Lucy. Yeah. The councils, there were so many people who were so afraid for good... Can I just finish the point, just for 1 minute?
Finish that point, Tim, and then I'll bring in Helen.
Look, there were so many people in local government, in the authorities, who, for good reasons, were worried about upsetting community tensions, that those girls went undefended. Now, there were good reasons for it, but no one has still been brought to justice for that. So you tell me, Lucy, that this isn't a culture in local government. It's just not true.
Well, I spoke to the Health Secretary earlier on, Wes Streeting, about this. And I also spoke to Ellie Reynolds, who's a grooming gang victim. Let's just have a little look at what I spoke to Wes Streeting about.
Well, I'm really sorry, and Lucy Powell has apologised for what she said on Friday night. I think she'd be mortified to hear that. And I know, having been in touch with Lucy last night, that she never wanted in any way to downplay, delegitimise or dismiss the experiences of victims of these appalling crimes. Now, I know that people say we should have a national inquiry. There have been a number of inquiries. I actually think actions are louder than words, and the one thing that we can work hard to deliver is justice for victims and preventing future crimes from happening.
Well, Anne in Surrey gave me a ring about 15 minutes ago, and we had to just end that conversation because I had another interview that was scheduled with the co-chairman of the Conservative Party. As promised, we've got Anne back on the line. Anne, when you hear what Wes Streeting says, do you have any faith in it?
I don't want to cause offence, so I shan't tell you how I feel about politicians. I've heard it all. Yeah. I've heard it all before. Mm-hmm. The only people in the 1970s, so we're not talking recent here, the only people in the 1970s who were even vaguely interested were a handful of youth workers in Croydon and Brixton and Lambeth, Lewisham. And these youth workers knew what we were going through and rescued the girls. And one particular one, she rescued the girls. And then she was attacked for rescuing the girls from the... Can't use that word online anyway. Persons who were earning money from running girls and getting them work of that nature. These gentlemen were earning a fortune, which meant that they could go to the comprehensive school, and you can spot. I mean, even you and I could walk past the local comprehensive school, and you can see which girls are the most insecure, the most nervous, and the most shy.
And you were targeted on us. You were telling us you had an older boyfriend. He said that you could go and see his friend, who he said was heartbroken, and that he wouldn't be jealous of what you did with him. And it went on from there on, by the sound of things.
It's such an easy scam. It's just such an easy scam. You go to the comprehensive school, you know which kids are, because you've got younger brothers or younger sisters at the school, and it's like they're always talking about, like Andrew's baby sister Sarah, and she's like really shy and she's really scared and she stammers a bit. Fine, that's the one you target because she's the most vulnerable and she's insecure and she hasn't got a lot of friends and she's got no self-confidence, yeah? So suddenly the guy in the car is saying, hello, hi there, girl. You're Andrew's, is it Andrew's baby sister? Yeah, I remember you from way back. Yeah, how you doing?
And they just lure them in like that. That's how it starts.
It's that easy. That is that easy. You are 12, 14 years old. You are gullible. You are stupid. You fall for all their, hi, I know you. I remember you. You're Andrew's baby sister. Yeah, how you... Da-da-da-da-da. And the next thing you know, well, 2 years later, you are living in a squat in Brixton and you are pregnant and you have nothing but a broken cheekbone, morning sickness, and a heroin addiction. And it's like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
All of the inquiries that they say they're going to do, the discussions they say they're going to do, the promises that these politicians make, they are not going to take away our children and our grandchildren. We know, possibly, who the fathers are of some of the children. But we don't... You can't take it back. I haven't got a time machine. I can't go back to 1979 and... I can't do it. So all their inquiries isn't going to help. The only thing you can do is stop it happening to the next generation down. And by saying that it's exclusively a Bangladeshi thing, it's exclusively a Jewish thing, it's exclusively a Jamaican thing, it's exclusively a, left-handed thing, it's exclusively a Wednesday thing. This is absolutely not honest.
Yeah.
This is happening in all over the place. And the groomers don't have big T-shirts on saying, hello, I'm a pigeon. They're just a big sign label. But for God's sake, when the children say to you, or when you've got a child who has got a girl, or even a boy, I have known boys in that situation. When you've got a 17-year-old boy who's always been socially awkward, suddenly he's got a group of slightly older friends, and he suddenly grows in confidence, and he's now got... I don't know what it is these days. I don't keep up with the kids here. So maybe he's suddenly got like he's been given a Ford Cortina or I don't know whatever it is, And suddenly he's got driving lessons from his slightly older mate Sean. This is a situation you want to look at as a parent.
Sure, and see that and see what's actually happening. And it was over 40 years since what happened to you. You're still clearly living with it every single day.
Ain't nothing to do about it. What do? You just you can't.
Have you ever had counselling? Have you ever talked it through with someone properly? Have you ever tried to make some sort of sense of it?
You change the nappies and you feed the kids. Okay, you go to work, you pay the bills, you go to the Sainsbury's, you get the food, you mop the floors. That's it. You can't do anything. You can't take time back. There is no time machine. I'm terribly sorry to offend ABC and everybody else, but we're not. This isn't X-Files. There is no magic.
Yeah.
This is real life. I can't go back. I know that Kim is dead. Yeah? I know that Anne is dead. I know that I know these people are dead. They committed suicide. I know that this one had a miscarriage in a squat in Angeltown in Brixton because she decided she wanted a miscarriage.
It's a lot to carry on. It's a lot to carry.
I know. Yeah. I know that the guy from the bloke I used to meet, a mate of mine, and he was young. He was groomed from a ute, and he couldn't handle being in that line of work himself, and he'd been taken and he'd been encouraged by these older boys and these men and the last time I saw him was in Alders Caff in Croydon. I know he was found dead a while later.
Yeah.
I can still see his face as I stand here. I can't unsee him. But I know what he went through. And I know that at the time it was like, who have you turned to? If back in the 1970s, we aren't going back to 70s and 80s here. And back then, if you said, but it says Jamaican guys that are older than me in this school. Well, that's racist. You can't say that. If you said in the 80s, it's those men that hang around at that place and they are gay and they are doing this to these boys, yeah? You can't say that. That's homophobic.
We need to get beyond that, don't we? We need to have a proper national conversation about it. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I really, really appreciate what you're saying to me and how honest you've been and how straightforward you've been and how it really is humbling actually to sit here and listen to what you've said, so thank you for doing so. If you need help, if this call distressed you, please go to talk.tv/helplines. Please have a look at some of the information that is there. What Anna said to me has really affected me, actually. I expect it's really affected you too. And this issue is not just a political row. It's not just, what some cabinet minister said. And that is important. But what's important is what we do about it, is the actions. It's the actions that the government has to take. The Conservatives failed on this. The coalition government failed on this. The Liberal Democrats failed on this. Labour is now failing on this. Let me know your thoughts about what Anne said. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
I think lost his legal challenge over the level of security he receives while in the UK. We can cross now to the Court of Appeal there and speak to Julia Atherley, Home Affairs correspondent at The Sun, who's been following this ruling. Julia, good afternoon to you. Tell us what's been happening.
Yeah,
So, do you remember Prince Harry made the decision in February 2020 to step back as a working royal? Initially they moved to Canada, obviously now they're in California. At that point his security was downgraded, so he doesn't get the full-time security that he would get if he was a full-time working royal, the same as his brother Prince William or indeed the King. Prince Harry then challenged that decision. So in effect now, his security is decided on a case-by-case basis when he's now in the UK, because obviously he's mainly now living in California. So Harry challenged that decision, made a digital review.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch on all sorts of matters, including Anne's call there. And if you need help and if that call distressed you, please go to talk.tv/helplines. And if you want to add your experience, your thoughts, your whatever's on the tip of your tongue today, it's a serious day. There's a lot happening politically. And there's a lot happening in regard to the discussion we're talking about on rape gangs. And the question we're asking is whether you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal. We're not just getting at Labour here. The Conservatives screwed up. Lib Dem screwed up. They could have done so much more in this, and they didn't. JB has been in touch on Lucy Powell's comments with a voice note. Here's what JB has to say.
I'm sorry, but Lucy Powell did not make an unfortunate mistake. She ran for office. She's in a position of power. She's paid a lot of money. She's supposed to represent a lot of people. She knows she needs to prepare what she's going to say and think before she speaks. If she is not able to do that, she needs to resign. Absolutely shameful. Doesn't she not have children of her own?
Anna's been in touch as well.
Good morning, Peter. Anna, sorry. Saying that Lucy Powell's comments were a mistake is absolutely outrageous, and sir, you are as bad as she is. Using dog whistle as a description for a gentleman who is discussing the rape, mass rape of children by Muslims. Wow, she should have resigned by now. I mean, as a woman and as a mother, where's your self-respect? All she's done is vocalise the Labour Party's stance on the mass rape of our children. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you to Jason in the Lake District as well. Talking about the interview I did just before the break there, what a beautiful lady. What a truly shocking insight into how her life has been affected. Bless her. That will have had such a profound impact on so many listeners. It had an impact on me as well, I can honestly say. We're going to talk more about this in just a few minutes' time, but I want to think about something that is absolutely fundamental to our station and to our society. We're the home of common sense, but we're also the home of free speech. And the fact that we can do interviews like that with Anna, the fact that I can shout questions at Wes Streeting and Nigel Huddleston, that's all to do with the freedom that we have, and the freedom we have because of our heroes in World War II. It's 80 years since VE Day. In 4 days' time, the 8th of May was the Victory in Europe Day. There was victory in Japan, of course, a few months hence, but it's 80 years, believe it or not. Loads of different commemorations are planned over the next 4 days. No better man to take us through them than Daniel Britton, who's a parliamentary and constitutional historian. Daniel, it's going to be a really, really interesting few days for this country, I think. Just tell us a flavour of what will be happening over the next few days, up to and including the 8th of May.
Good morning, Peter, and
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for having me on again. A big flavour, I think, national commemorations started off at 12 noon on Monday at the Cenotaph in Whitehall, where Timothy Spall will be reading extracts from Churchill's VE Day victory speech. Victory parade then along Whitehall, through Admiralty Arch, along the Mall, and they will reach the King and Queen at the Queen Victoria Memorial. Will be a special platform there. Prime Minister will be on that, and also other members of the royal family. I think the key thing of the events is big state occasions, church services, Westminster Abbey on Thursday, Edinburgh on Tuesday, Wales, Llandaff Cathedral on Wednesday. We'll see lighting up of buildings, lots of buildings in London, as you might expect, but for example, Durham Cathedral, Gateshead Millennium Bridge, Cardiff Castle, Castell Coch, if anyone knows that, in Cardiff, the most bizarre architecture building imaginable, so it would be wonderful to see that lit up. Carnarvon Castle, Buckingham Palace, of course, and actually Guernsey, Castle Cornet in Guernsey. Now, Guernsey and Jersey were liberated the day after May the 8th, which surprisingly is May the 9th, and the rest of the Channel Islands and the days after that, they were a day later. The other important aspect is community events. I think the organisers are very much wanting to see community events, lunch parties, including on Monday, for example. Community groups, very important. And there will, in fact, be a street party on HMS Belfast. That's the great ship moored alongside Tower Bridge. Took part in D-Day, some of the opening skirmishes at D-Day, later in the Arctic convoys. Now, how you have a street party on a ship, I'm not quite sure.
It'll be fascinating to see.
Well, I just wondered if it's on the gangplank, Peter.
I hope not. I hope you wouldn't want to fall off. Daniel, this is fascinating. There's so much that is planned right throughout the United Kingdom. I know Enniskillen Castle as well is going to be lit up, and that is going to help us remember our heroes, many from Northern Ireland as well, my part of the world. How does this contrast with the different kind of commemorations we've had throughout the years? Of course, we are now in the habit, and I hope it's a habit that continues, of talking to you on Remembrance Sunday. But this is different, isn't it? This is a very different type of commemoration when we're commemorating the end of the war, and not just those who have fallen and given their lives for our freedom, but also just the huge hope that there was at the end of the war when Nazism was defeated.
There was huge hope afterwards, and people were very clear that they were fighting for freedoms and the freedom of speech. People were very, very clear that that was an object of the war, as you said at the opening to this. Reaction to these ceremonies changes over the years. You're quite often kind enough to point out how ancient I am. I think I watched the
classic.
I think I watched a 1970 commemoration.
From your pram, no doubt.
Yeah, that was, it was 25 years after the war. Yet the war to me seemed a very distant thing. My mother was nearly 9 when war broke out, and just after 14 when it finished. Now, she is 94 now, so you do have to be really very old to remember any aspect of the war. But within it, there is enormous remembrance. And you mentioned Remembrance Sunday. A few years back, interest was rather going from that. But the Iraq War sparked interest again, then followed by Afghanistan. And instead of just commemorations on Remembrance Sunday, we started seeing 2-minute silences on the actual anniversary. So usually within 2 or 3 days of each other. That was when MPs, for example, started having their 2-minute silence, and other areas around Britain. So it's commemorated more now than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago.
And just briefly, Daniel, because we're coming up to the news, but there will be, of course, some of those who serve, but really, in terms of big anniversaries, the 80th anniversary, I'm sure the 90th will be very, very different in terms of how many people are still around. It's probably one of the last times that we can really say to those who are still living who served in the Second World War, thank you.
Well, indeed. Alan Kennett, who's 100 years old, kicks off events in Whitehall on Monday. I remember watching the cenotaph on the 100th anniversary of the First World War. 3 First World War veterans went by on that occasion in 2018. Within a year or so, they had all departed.
Yeah.
So we are at the very end of those who directly remember the war.
Yeah. Daniel, thank you. Fascinating to talk to you as always. Just briefly, literally in 20 seconds, Daniel, will you be involved in any of this? How will you be commemorating VE Day yourself? Have we got Daniel? Nope, we've lost him. Okay, well, listen, we got a good upsum of what is happening there anyway, and I'm sure many people will be involved with it. And the Prime Minister, of course, has said the 80th anniversary is a moment of national unity, a time to celebrate that hard-won peace, honour the memory of those who lost their lives, and remember the sacrifices made by so many to secure our freedom. We will talk more in the next hour. We're going to talk to another Labour MP, Stella Creasy, about abortion. That's a very controversial issue in terms of what she's proposing. Also about 8 arrests in connection with 2 separate terrorism investigations and Lucy Powell's comments. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. I'm Peter Cardwell here until 1 o'clock. Loads to talk about this Sunday. Lots of people want to talk about Lucy Powell, the Leader of the House of Commons, and what she has said on rape gangs inquiry. She's called them a dog whistle issue. She has since apologised for that, but Tim Montgomery, who we spoke to earlier on, frequent guest on Talk, was her interlocutor on a BBC programme. We'll hear what she had to say, what he had to say about it, and then I put the question to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, and the co-chairman of the Conservative Party. They're important politicians, but you're at least as important. Tell me what you think. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about 8 people being arrested in connection with 2 separate terrorism investigations. We'll also talk to Stella Creasy, the Labour MP, in a rare interview on Talk, where she thinks that abortion should be protected as a human right in England and Wales. What do you think about that? We'll play voice notes too. You can send those in on 0344 499 1000. Drop me a call on that as well, and we'll make sure you get on the air between now and 1. That's the main number, so it's voice notes, it's calls, and it's WhatsApp text messages on 0344 499 1000. You can also text me on 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV and follow me at Peter Cardwell. Remember, the question we're asking this morning is, do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? Let me know your thoughts. That number one more time, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss here on Talk between now and 1 o'clock. So Lucy Powell is the leader of the House of Commons. She's a senior Labour MP, a cabinet minister, and she was asked by Tim Montgomery, who is a frequent contributor to the station. I'm sure you've seen him. He's a former Number 10 advisor. He's now a Reform Party member. He talked about the rape gangs scandal. He asked whether she had seen the documentary. We remember, actually, if you think about not a documentary but a drama, Adolescence, how Kemi Badenoch was asked by the BBC this sort of incredulity that she hadn't seen Adolescence, that somehow it was so important that she watched the drama, which I think actually is very good and should be watched, but lots of people think isn't. But that's by the by. The point is that Channel 4 did a major documentary in the last few days on rape gangs. It's been broadcast. An awful lot of people have watched it and reacted to it. So the question is, had Lucy Powell watched it? A very reasonable question. This is how Lucy Powell reacted, and you're going to hear Tim Montgomery's voice too. This is from the BBC, their programme Any Questions on Radio 4 on Friday night.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay.
There was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Okay, Lucy. Yeah. The councils, there were so many people who were so afraid for good. Can I just finish the point just for 1 minute?
Finish that point, Tim, and then I'll bring in Helen.
Look, there were so many people in local government, in the authorities, who, for good reasons, were worried about upsetting community tensions, that those girls went undefended. Now, there were good reasons, but no one has still been brought to justice for that. So you tell me, Lucy, that this isn't a culture in local government. It's just not true.
Lucy Powell talking about rape gangs as a dog whistle issue. Well, we spoke to a victim of rape gangs earlier on, Ellie Reynolds. I asked her what her message to the government would be, and then put that to the government, put that to Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. Let's have a look at this. What is your message to the government, to Lucy Powell, after you hear that sentiment expressed on Friday night?
I think my message would be, you sound exactly like the people that go out and abuse. To downgrade, to dismiss, and it was just such a scummy comment. I honestly have no words for how degrading that is.
Well, I'm really sorry, and Lucy Powell has apologised for what she said on Friday night. I think she'd be mortified to hear that. And I know, having been in touch with Lucy last night, that she never wanted in any way to downplay, delegitimise or dismiss the experiences of victims of these appalling crimes. Now, I know that people say we should have a national inquiry. There have been a number of inquiries. I actually think actions are louder than words, and the one thing that we can work hard to deliver is justice for victims and preventing future crimes from happening.
Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, speaking to me earlier on there. Frank in Colchester has sent me a message and said, regarding Lucy Powell, imagine the reaction from Labour if it was Nigel Farage or another Reform MP who had made the dog whistle remark. I'm fairly sure an apology for misspeaking would not be acceptable to them. That's Frank in Colchester who has sent that message. I think you're absolutely spot on, Frank. I spoke to Nigel Huddleston about this as well. He's the co-chairman of the Conservative Party. This is what he had to say. Should Lucy Powell resign? If so, why?
I'm afraid she probably should, because it betrays a lack of understanding of the scale of the problem and an accusatory attitude that we get from people on the left, that anybody who raises issues and concerns like rape gangs is exaggerating. Nobody's exaggerating here. Your previous caller, Anne, was also talking about these issues. I think Labour do not understand the scale of the issue or the awesome responsibility that they should have as the government to do something about it. It is quite clear now, in a way that I don't think we understood even a few years or even months ago, the scale of the problem. We're now talking about potentially 50 towns and cities really facing extensive rape gangs. And we now have to get to the bottom of this. And that absolutely requires a national inquiry, a national public inquiry.
Well, I spoke to Anne in Surrey about this. She was a caller who rang in previously. Lots of reaction to that. This person says, I am a quote-unquote normal 59-year-old white straight man living in Cheshire. I've listened to this station since day one, lots of other stations throughout my life. I've never sat through a more powerful and tragic, honest call than that last caller than Anne. Massive respect, wishes and hope to her immense soul, says this person. Gerald says, what Anne has described a little bit earlier on the programme and the pain she is living with made me cry. I am 80. Labour just doesn't want to be bothered about rape gangs, says Gerald. We're asking the question today, do you trust the government to sort the rape gang scandal? Well, loads of people have been in touch. We're going to talk to Georgina in London in a second on the phone, but I want to play a couple of voice notes first. Dave first, please.
Good morning, Peter. Dave here. Your man Paul Richards, Wes Streeton, they're all rolled out today. And defence, they're putting up the shutters. All they do is deflect. Look what happened to Boris Johnson over a piece of cake during COVID. This is 10 times worse. Lucy Powell should go and her constituency should call for not a retrial, that'd be wrong. Retrial's not the word, but it should be.
Dave, I think what you're referencing there is maybe a recall petition where what can happen is that 10% of the people in the constituency sign a petition essentially so that a by-election is held. Now the MP can certainly stand in that election if they want to, but those recall petitions are something that are part of our society, have been for the last 10 or 15 years. And maybe that's something that people in her constituency want to think about. Maybe she should resign from the cabinet. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Paddy's been in touch with a voice note.
Good morning, Peter. Great show. Fantastic show, actually. The only way we're going to get results and people held to account is by a national inquiry. And Labour knows this. People have got away with appeasing and enabling abusers and rapists for too long. Police marking their own homework won't bring results, and councils marking their own homework won't bring results. We need a national inquiry. Thank you. Great show.
Thank you, Paddy. Georgina's in London has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. You can do the same thing. Plenty of time between now and 1 o'clock. Georgina, your thoughts this afternoon?
I can't really tell you my thoughts because you wouldn't be able to wear them about this woman. But Lucy Powell has sickened me to my stomach. As a mother, I am disgusted by her comments. Lucy Powell is a clear example of why the public have lost faith in the present government.
She's apologised, Georgina. Clearly you don't accept that apology.
No, I don't want her apology. Her apology means nothing. To talk or not to, as the case shows, what is being done regarding these Pakistani rape gangs just goes to show just how far down the ladder of priority these children come, Peter. She's an embarrassment to all mothers nationwide and should resign immediately. If she does not tender her resignation, that excuse of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, should sack her. Her demeaning comments regarding these horrific crimes against our children, the children of Britain, was totally abhorrent. She made them sound insignificant. Well, I just want to say to Lucy Powell and the Labour government that our children are not dispensable commodities.
Okay.
And even though these children are not related to each and every one of us, they're still our children of Britain, and we won't stop fighting for them until this monstrous exploitation is stopped and these children get justice. We need a national inquiry, Peter, immediately. Our children matter.
Georgina, thank you for your sentiments there. Clearly, this has really touched a nerve with you, and if you are affected by this issue, if you have an emotional reaction to it, please go to talk.tv/helplines. There are lots of people who can help you, and Georgina, clearly someone who cares very, very passionately about this, as lots of other people do. We're having so many messages coming into the building. I know a woman who is also a victim of the child grooming Jamaican rape gangs. That's what Anne was talking about a little bit earlier on. This is why we need a national inquiry, says this person. Stuart says that interview should be played back to every politician, says Stuart, fighting back the tears in Middlesbrough, talking about Anne a little bit earlier on. Brian in Stoke-on-Trent, Anne should be meeting Jess Phillips and Starmer and opening their eyes about the rape gang debacle, says Brian in Stoke-on-Trent. Jane says, the more you play that Lucy Powell clip, the worse it sounds. All she needed to do was answer the question respectfully, as she would have others. If the Prime Minister doesn't sack her, he will be the one to answer the questions as to why he won't have a public inquiry. Mark in Suffolk says Lucy Powell shouldn't resign. She should be fired now. Lots on VE Day as well. We're, of course, looking forward to that. In those commemorations this week, 80 years since so many veterans laid down their lives for our freedom, and we're commemorating that this week. Howard says VE Day celebrations, and so they should be less. They should never be forgotten, though I think that came from World War I. I'm concerned that this ignorant rabble supporting Hamas in the disguise of supporting Palestine will try to disrupt. Well, let's hope they have at least some respect and don't do that. Dan in Halifax says, thank you for mentioning the VE Day commemorations in Northern Ireland. I noticed your interview only mentioned England, Wales and Scotland. As an Englishman, I feel Northern Ireland is absolutely due the same respect as the rest of the UK. Dan, you're right, and from people north and south, of course, in World War I, and mainly from Northern Ireland in World War II, of course, fought for our freedom. SVS says, with regard to sexual abuse, I think there needs to be much closer scrutiny of the judges involved. I do not trust judges since my abuser was acquitted when I was 7 years old. I was the one who received the punishment, as was deemed I was lying, even though he was caught on the act. That was 74 years ago. Goodness me. Dave in Dorset says, today in history, HMS Sheffield was attacked and 20 souls remained on the ship when it sank. Lieutenant Harris, a Harrier pilot, also lost his life today when he was shot down and crashed near to Goose Green. Worth a mention when you talk about the sacrifices made in the past. Absolutely, Dave. Very, very happy to mention that. That's Dave from Dorset, who's a Falklands veteran himself, and thank you for your service to our country. Paul says, hi Peter, great show. The thing we need to look out for and expect in the coming weeks and months is MPs crossing the floor to join reform. It's inevitable. Rats fleeing the sinking ship. One more on VE Day just before the break. Barry says, regarding the VE Day celebrations, I thought President Trump's recent comments downplaying Britain's contribution were unforgivable and displayed a lack of historical knowledge. Britain supplied the time in 1940 to continue the fight against Germany. If the country had been invaded and defeated, what would America have done then, says Barry. What indeed. Lots to think about. We're going to talk to the Labour MP Stella Creasy in a second. She says that abortion should be protected as a human right in England and Wales. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to her in just a second. Stay with us.
The thing is this, if he was coming over to visit his father, the king, he would get royal protection because he'd be going to the royal estates, so he would be absolutely fine. If he was coming to do proper business, like a state visit, although he's not a working royal anymore, again, there are provisions made from that. But he decided to go be a private citizen in a different country. So if he can now demand legally to have armed protection, then what's stopping Beyonce from doing the same? What's stopping Richard Gere from saying he needs the same? I need...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch today. We'll definitely have many more calls, texts, voice notes and other messages between now and 1 o'clock when we come off air. There's lots to discuss. There's also a very interesting story from Stella Creasy. She's a backbench Labour MP. She wants abortion to be protected as a human right in England and Wales. I wonder what you think about that. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Stella joins us now. Stella, good afternoon to you.
Hi there, Peter.
I'm going to ask you, I promise you, about the story that you want to talk about in a second, but it would be remiss of me not to ask you about two specific things, first of all. The first one is, in light of Lucy Powell's comments on grooming gangs, do you think she should resign?
Look, I think Lucy has been very clear that she apologises for what she said on Friday night. I can hear from what she said and how she said it. She did not mean it how it came across, but the right thing to do is to apologise. I know she's had casework on grooming. Sadly, we all have. We know how serious this issue is. I think the most important thing now is to see what Louise Casey, who I think many of us recognise as a deeply respected civil servant, comes back with in her audit about what is going on. Because I hear and I understand the concern about what's happening. Do we learn the lessons? Were there cover-ups? And there clearly has been evidence of people not proceeding with investigations out of misplaced concerns, but we need to understand what happened as a result of the first national inquiry, and we need to understand why in different local authorities are getting different results. So I think Lucy must feel awful because she has been very clear that she apologises if she caused any offence. The most important thing now is to get to the bottom of what is happening and why still people don't feel confident, and particularly I'm thinking about the victims, having talked to victims of this, that there is a serious plan in place to stop this.
Clearly, the local elections have been very bad for your party, for the Labour Party. Keir Starmer says he's going to listen, he hears, he understands, he gets it. Do you believe him?
Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Everybody, I think, in the Labour movement is devastated, not least because we lost some fantastic local Labour councillors, and everybody will tell you how local Labour councillors are the backbone of actually getting stuff done in their community. There were some great candidates standing. And I think we also recognise, and I've been very clear about the concern about what the reform and the kind of anti-politics vote means. Nobody is more worried than me by some of the things that have been coming out of Nigel Farage's mouth in the last 24 hours. Having won all those seats, got that responsibility now to deliver. And the first thing he wants to do is start a fight with people in local government. Now, I'm very clear. The problem is never with the public. The problem is always with politicians, and all of us.
But that disruption, Stella. Sorry to interrupt you, but that disruption, disrupting what local government is doing, disrupting what politicians are happening in Westminster. I mean, that is what millions of people have voted for.
I don't think people have voted for a war on families, which is essentially what Nigel Farage is starting. And let me be clear about what I mean by that. When he doesn't come in and say, absolutely, we're going to get the basics right. So most people will talk to you about their bin collections. They'll talk to you about parking routes. They'll talk to you about kind of the gripes they have with local delivery. And that's completely fair. When he comes in and his first port of call is, I want to start a war on working from home. As if, I have to be honest with you, Peter, that didn't come up on the doorsteps. And I was campaigning across the country with my Labour colleagues. Nobody ever said to me, what I think is holding us back is working from home. But I'll tell you what working from home represents. It's the ability to do the school run. It's the ability not to pay thousands of pounds maximum commuting fees that a lot of people are having to pay to go to work. It is the ability, as we've seen in the private sector, to be more productive. So when Nigel Farage starts with that and doesn't start with, I hear you, I know we want to get the basics right, I worry about the people in those communities, because what we don't need to see is more division. We need to see this country being able to rebuild all the damage that we've seen over the last 14 years.
Well, the country certainly is divided, and we've seen that in the last few days. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, as time goes on. But I want to ask you now about a proposal you have. You say you want to make it a human right in England and Wales for people to have an abortion. Abortion is available free at the point of use throughout the United Kingdom. Obviously, there are different restrictions in different weeks and so on. Why is it important to be protected as a human right in your view?
Well, you will know of all people, Peter, given your background, that actually abortion is only legal in Northern Ireland. It's only a human right in Northern Ireland. The Secretary of State has specific responsibilities to protect safe and legal and local access for women in Northern Ireland. I want for my constituents in Walthamstow the same protection, because we can see already that women's bodies have become the battlefield of the culture war. And I think most people in this country believe that women should be able to access an abortion. That's certainly what the polls tell us. They probably don't realise that abortion isn't legal. It's still illegal in England and Wales.
But no one's being prosecuted. No one's being prosecuted for having an abortion, though, are they?
Yes, they are. In fact, there's a court case taking place right now. Hundreds of women have been investigated and prosecuted over the last couple of years. And we don't, if we're honest, understand what's driving that. But it's meant that you've got 15-year-olds who had a late-term miscarriage. They didn't even know they were pregnant, finding not a counsellor at the bottom of their hospital bed, but a police officer. So we have seen an uptake in investigations and prosecutions of women for having abortions. We see the impact that it has on services. And frankly, I don't think it is right that women in Northern Ireland, and I was one of the people who was the architect of that change, have more rights protected than women in London or Birmingham or Newcastle. So this is about protecting a right that I think many people thought they did have that actually is under attack. And as we have seen in the politics, we've already seen abortion is becoming a political football, as it has been in America. It is now increasingly here being politicised in that way. Our proposals would put into law a human right for a woman to access a safe and legal abortion in England and Wales. Also make it critically not something that could be unpicked or restricted through secondary legislation. That, I believe, should get cross-party support, because I recognise there are people who agree and disagree with abortion in different political movements. But when we have seen the Vice President of America criticising our protections for women to get access to abortion in England and Wales, when Mr Farage has criticised abortion in England and Wales, I think it is right that we don't wait for further attacks. We make sure we protect what is a fundamental choice and a fundamental human right to choose what happens to your own body.
What about the right of people to protest at abortion clinics? We've seen the buffer zones there. We've seen the woman who received the fixed penalty notice, didn't pay it, and then was given convicted in a court in regard to that. What is your view on that?
Well, again, I was one of the architects of that legislation along with a cross-party group. And the fact that you are talking about that and not the right of women to be able to access an abortion.
Well, we have
privacy,
talked about that, yeah.
But it's about privacy. The whole point about buffer zones is a time and place. There is no restriction on people's religious liberty to be able to pray for those people having abortions or to speak against abortion. I will always defend the right of people to a campaign against abortion. What I won't say is that those rights trump the privacy of a woman to be able to go and have an abortion in peace without somebody standing in their way trying to tell them they're making the wrong decision. So what buffer zones do is balance human rights. They balance the right of people to protest about abortion with the right of women to have privacy when they choose to have one.
OK, Stella Creasy, thank you very much. Appreciate that. That's Stella Creasy, the MP for Walthamstow, Labour MP. What do you think about what she just said? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222. We'll take more of your calls, and we'll talk to Danny Shaw as well. He's a crime policing and justice commentator, former advisor to the Home Secretary, about those 8 arrests in connection with 2 separate terrorism investigations. Let us know your thoughts on all of that. As I say, 0344 499 1000.
Well, you should let it out,
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of reaction, including earlier on to our panel. Taff in Dover has been in touch about Paul Richards there. Says he's incorrect regarding how reform managed councils will reflect how people vote in Wales. Labour has had 25 years running Wales with worse outcomes everywhere compared to England, and it had no effect on how people voted in last year's election, says Taff in Dover. Actually, on Paul's comment, she made a comment about migration earlier on. He said there's no quick fix on this. Ian has been in touch on this. Let's play Ian's voice note.
Hi Peter, it's Ian from East Grinstead. I'm boiling. Your commentator on the political agenda is talking about migration, saying there's nothing we can do to stop the illegals. Yes, there is. We've put them in tents, behind barbed wire, secure fences. Anyone who comes illegal never gets citizenship. They don't get any benefits. They get basic food. They're processed and then shipped back. And if they've got nowhere to go back, they stay and live the rest of their lives in those camps. They are illegal people coming here. Of course there's something we can do. We stop the pull factor.
Well, thank you, Ian. Appreciate that. And lots of reaction as well to Lucy Powell's comments. Gary says, I don't think Labour's refusal to hold national inquiries into these grooming gangs has anything to do with protecting its Muslim vote, because for every Muslim vote they risk losing many more from decent non-Muslim Labour voters who are as appalled as the rest of us by the Labour government's handling of this grooming gang scandal. I'm increasingly of the opinion, says Gary, that there are people high up in Labour who cut their teeth in local government when and where these grooming gangs were operating, who risk being implicated in the cover-up if the truth about whatever went on ever comes out. Certainly, I don't. You're right in a lot of what you say, Gary. Certainly, all Muslims certainly don't vote for Labour, but that is a really interesting point. And there are, of course, Muslims who vote for all sorts of political parties. Simon says, a message to that caller Georgina a little bit earlier on. Thank you. Kind regards, says Simon in Paddock Wood. Let's have another call now from Alan in Salford. Alan, thank you for your call. Alan's giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say, Alan?
Well, I was watching your programme this morning with that poor girl on one of the grooming gangs. Who was. Yes,
Ellie, who was trafficked.
Ellie,
yeah.
Yes, Ellie. And it's the first time I've come to tears. And I'm an old guy, 72, who doesn't normally come to tears. I've had some tears in the last few years. With this government we got in.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, there should be a national inquiry, and this nonsense about 5 years it's going to take. What a load of crap. The money they're putting into everything else around now at the moment,
Well, they can sort some things quickly, can't they, Alan? They can. We've got the blast furnace and the steelworks in Scunthorpe. They can sort that in one day. They can do all the legislation. They can use their huge majority, the vast power of what the Labour Party have. But grooming gangs, rape gangs, it seems to just be kicked further and further down the line, doesn't it?
It's a massive cover-up for my money. And I know actually, probably the security services, MI5, have got loads of it hidden somewhere. They're not stupid here, but the trouble is they're too busy looking for far-right gangs, aren't they? Far-right activists than anything else. But it needs bringing out, and there's a lot of police involved in this. There's a lot of judiciary involved in this.
There's just an awful lot that could come out. The question is whether it will. Alan, thanks for your thoughts. I really appreciate that. Lots more praise for Georgina as well, who was on about 20 minutes ago. Bang on, Georgina, says this person. If every constituency had recall petitions, firstly, does there have to be a reason for them? Yes, there does. And secondly, if it was possible and Labour lost each one, would that mean they could not govern? Lucy Powell needs to go, says Treacle in Bridgeend. Yeah, there needs to be a reason for the recall petition. You can't just do it, otherwise people would just do them all the time, and we do need some stability in our democracy. I want to talk now about Home Affairs stories. 8 arrests in connection with 2 separate terrorism investigations. Also a horrendous story in Gateshead. A boy has been killed after an industrial estate fire. 14 children have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter, and we'll do that with Danny Shaw in just a second. But before then, I'm just going to read out a couple more messages actually. Dave says, I was a civil servant for 25 years in a department which relied heavily on deployment to different offices to cover sickness and holidays. Now and again I would get deployment notices sending me to 3 or even 4 different areas on the same day. This would be followed by a phone call telling me to ignore them because they were compiling waiting times to send to the Minister. This is what happens when departments chase targets. Debs in County Durham says, Lucy Powell, Jess Phillips, they're of no service or use to the victims, the survivors and the future of our children who are our most precious gifts. Sacking them is the only answer. Penny in Kent on the rape gang issue. There must be a national inquiry. Just think down the line, there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of illegal immigrants resorting to these issues. They're nearly all young, fit, naturally, sexually charged men from different cultures. How could anyone be surprised at what is probably going to happen? There will already be prostitution and undesirable things going on in these hotels that we just don't hear about. Marion says, a very emotional show today. I've been in tears listening to Anne, but an excellent show nonetheless. Keep up the good work, says Marion. Marion, thank you. It's not been the easiest show for me either, it must be said, and we do this together. We do the show together. You listening or watching at home are as important as I am, because it's my show, but it's your show too, and I want to make sure that everybody gets their voice heard. There's plenty of time between now and 1 to give me a ring, to tell me what's on your mind. 0344 499 1000. Philippa in Dorset's been in touch and has dialed that number. Philippa, what are your thoughts this afternoon?
Well, I think that what's happening with this...
Oh, Philippa, it's just not a good line. Oh, go ahead, Philippa, sorry.
I'm still here.
Great.
Basically, I think it's absolutely atrocious what's happening. And if any of these MPs' children, if this was happening to their children and their families, they'd be doing something about it straight away. Straight away. It would be headline news. But because it doesn't matter to them, because it doesn't apply to them, they're not interested. They're just trying to brush everything under the carpet. But if people really knew what had happened to some of those victims of those rape gangs, they would be up in arms. But because it's not really reported a lot on, and the details aren't reported on, people don't know. But I just think there needs to be a national inquiry, like Georgina said. We need to get this sorted, and we need to protect our children and make sure that they're safe. You know, this is our future generation we're talking about.
Yeah. Philippa, thank you. The line's not brilliant, so I'm just going to end it there if that's okay. But Philippa, you made your point there and you made it really, really well. I'm sorry just about the quality of the line there. We will certainly return to this in a minute or two. But just for the meantime, I want to talk about the 8 arrests in connection with 2 separate terrorism investigations. Danny Shaw is with me now. He's a crime policing and justice commentator. He's also a former advisor to the Home Secretary. This is one operation on Saturday. Counter-terrorism officers arrested 5 men, 4 of whom are Iranian nationals. All are in police custody. Danny, just bring us up to date with what has happened, why it's happened, what we know so far.
Well, what we know is from Scotland Yard about 2 separate counter-terrorism investigations. In one of them, there were arrests at addresses in northwest London and West London. 3 men arrested. Aged 39, 44 and 55. They're all Iranian nationals, and they're being detained under the National Security Act. The National Security Act is the act which sort of updated the Official Secrets Act and brought new laws around sabotage, espionage, harassment, to threats to political dissidents, foreign interference, and assisting a foreign intelligence service. So that's the act that has been used to make those arrests in and around London. There was also a separate operation involving 5 arrests in Swindon, West London, Stockport, Rochdale, and also in the Manchester area. At least 4 of the 5 arrests of Iranian men, aged between 29 and 46, and they have been arrested, Peter, under Section 5 of the Terrorism Act 2006, and this relates to allegations of preparing acts of terrorism. And obviously, as you can expect, there's a lot of activity going on behind the scenes, and also I think certain raids have taken place. And all we know from the Met Police officially is that the investigation relates to a suspected plot to target a specific premises.
And that's okay, and that's basically all we know so far, Danny. Thanks for that update, I appreciate that. In regard to the boy killed in Gateshead in the industrial estate fire, 14 children arrested on suspicion of manslaughter, another horrific story that has emerged overnight. Just tell us what we know about that.
Well, 14 children arrested over the death of a 14-year-old boy at an industrial park. This is the Fairfield Industrial Park in the Bill Key area of Gateshead, and this happened on Friday night. The fire was put out, but police are saying a body believed to be that of Leighton Carr who'd been reported missing was found inside the building. That's according to Northumbria Police. Amongst those arrested, there were 3 girls aged between 11 and 14 and 11 boys. They are being held on suspicion of manslaughter. They're still in police custody. And this all relates to that fire. Police received reports just after 8 o'clock. This is a big site on the southern banks of the River Tyne, a 15-acre site. It's fallen into disrepair in recent years. And a number of buildings abandoned, a gatehouse belonging to the site had been smashed down. And according to locals, there a regular occurrence was teenagers and young children trespassing on the site, with fires also happening sometimes. But this fire, it is said, was the biggest seen for some time. So police are describing this as an extremely tragic incident where a boy has sadly lost his life. And they are piecing together exactly what happened and trying to make sense of it all with those 14 children in custody. So absolutely terrible event.
It just sounds absolutely horrific. Danny, thanks for that update. Really appreciate that. That's Danny Shaw there, who's a crime, policing and justice commentator. He's also a former advisor to the Home Secretary. We spoke earlier on to Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, and I asked him about the amount of money that's being spent on private healthcare. He didn't know. Let's just remind ourselves of what he said to me a bit earlier on in the programme.
I can't remember off the top of my head how much we've spent through the independent sector, but as I've said before the election, this is the mandate we have. If I can get people seen faster through a private service up the road, as long as they're not paying privately, as long as they're getting it free on NHS terms, then I think that's both the pragmatic and the principled thing to do. Pragmatic because it gets people seen faster, principled because it means that those services aren't just open to those who can afford it, that the NHS is getting them seen faster. But on this broader point, so I should be really clear about the figures. We promised 2 million more appointments within our first year. We've already delivered well over 3 million.
I don't know about you, but I was a bit surprised the Health Secretary didn't know how much money we're spending on private healthcare. We have asked the Department of Health how much have they spent since Labour came to power on private healthcare. What is that as a proportion of their budget? If we get the answer in the next 19 minutes, I will tell you. If we get it after that, I'll tweet it out. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Cardwell. Lots of time still to get your voice heard. 0344 499 1000. Joe says, is it possible to please find out if Stella Creasy has a petition regarding the abortion debate? If so, could Peter please give us the website address so we can all sign it? Many thanks, says Joe. Great show, as it always is. Thank you for everything you do. Joe, appreciate that. I don't think there is a petition on this specifically, but have a look on Stella Creasy's website and I'm sure you'll get more information about what she's doing. Jacqueline in Liverpool says, as a Christian woman, I vehemently disagree with abortion. In the modern age, there's absolutely no reason to have an abortion if you don't want a child. Maybe let's start charging them for abortions and also for C-sections. Jacqueline, I've wrestled with this issue a lot in terms of abortion, and abortions are always going to happen, whether you want them to or not. They are always going to happen, and if we don't do them in a legal and safe way, they're going to happen illegally, they're going to happen backstreet, people are going to die as a result. I wish no abortions happened. I wish 0 abortions happened. I wish everybody who is having sex who doesn't want a child uses protection and protects themselves from all sorts of sexually transmitted infections and from having children if they don't want to. If you do get pregnant and it does happen that people don't want to be pregnant, well then they're going to have abortions. I don't want them to. It's not a desirable thing. It's not something I advocate, but it is something that happens, and that's why we must do it in a legal, safe, medically sound way. That's my view on the issue. What rubbish, Stella Creasy is talking, says Nick. It's obvious people supposedly working from home aren't. They're going out for a coffee, walking the dog, waiting in for the Amazon delivery. I've lost count where you ring up a call centre and in the background you hear a dog barking or a child crying. You're either at work or relaxing at home. It can't be both. More Labour claptrap. Peter says the Labour councillors that lost in the local elections are not that great, otherwise they would still be in power, says Pete. Pete, I have a little bit of sympathy with some councillors who lose their seats, because sometimes people don't vote based on, you know, the name of your local councillor. To ask yourself right now, who is your local councillor or councillors for the local ward? Because most people, let's face it, don't know. I don't think I know my local councillors for my local ward. I know I live in a Labour area, unfortunately, and they're Labour, but I don't know their names. Jane says, so Labour MPs can apologise and we can move on. Tory MPs get hounded until they leave their job. Simon says, it's clear the government minister just didn't say it once, but 3 times. You can even hear in her background saying it's a very dismissive run. Labour is banning such speech, says Simon. Joe says, morning Peter, 6 years ago people didn't work from home and we were in a much better place then than we are now. Work from home has had a profoundly negative knock-on effect on small businesses. A footfall from those workers is reduced. It is no coincidence that small businesses are going down the pan and closing at a phenomenal rate. The boarded up shops in our town centres prove that some of that negative impact. Stella Creasy is wrong about Farage attacking families. He's trying to get our economy moving. Another person says, if Lucy Powell had said what she said on Twitter, would 6 police be knocking down her door by now? It's a reasonable question. Good afternoon, Peter, says Barry. I will be attending the VE Day event on the Ards Peninsula tomorrow in Northern Ireland, and I will take time to remember your great uncle. He contributed to final victory. You should be very proud of him. Barry, what a lovely message. Thank you for remembering that. I really appreciate that. James says, my granddad was a desert rat, got the Africa, Italy, French, Europe star, and his dad, the Great War, got that medal. My goodness, James, what a proud record you have in your family. Terence says, I play in a band that performs the Pink Floyd music to large audiences. We play the song Mother from the Wall album that has the lyrics, Mother, should I trust the government? Without fail, at every concert we play, this line causes a loud response from a large section of the audience of no flipping way. And they don't shout flipping. I expect they do not. Terence, and thank you very much for writing flipping there, which is keeping me on the right side of my bosses on a day off call. Terence says, I've noticed this response gets much louder and wider since we came out of lockdown, says Terence. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting point. We're going to play some more voice notes. We're going to get some more calls from you, get your response. There's loads of people who want to get their voice heard today, and that's what we do on this station. That's why I love working with the station. We're the home of free speech, and we're going to hear more from you in just a second here on Talk.
Lost his legal challenge over the level of security he receives while in the UK. We can cross now to the Court of Appeal there and speak to Julia Atherley, Home Affairs correspondent at The Sun, who's been following this ruling. Julia, good afternoon to you. Tell us what's been happening.
Yeah, so do you remember Prince Harry made the decision in February 2020 to step back as a working royal? Initially they moved to Canada, obviously now they're in California. At that point his security was downgraded, so he doesn't get the full time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, let's see if I can get through 7 voice notes and 2 callers between now and the top of the hour. Adam on Lucy Powell.
Hi, Peter. Yeah, just on this Lucy, could you imagine if Nigel Farage had said something of this, or let alone anyone in Reform? Could you imagine what they would be calling for Labour? And this just proves now, if she is not sacked, this just proves to me and a lot of the British public what a cover-up's going on, as we all know, that's for sure. Thanks for a great show, Peter.
Thank you for that, Adam. Dan on Lucy Powell.
Hi, Peter. Great show as always. So, yeah, those comments, wow, head blown. I purposefully played them to a neighbour of mine who is, let's say, a Labour advocate. I did it under a bit of a different guise, though. We were in the pub last night, and I said, listen to what this reform candidate said. Played the clip. And her immediate reaction was, she should resign. That is unacceptable for anyone to say that. I then told her it was actually the House of Commons leader for Labour. And funnily enough, she started defending her.
Oh, did she now?
People are wild. But those comments, absolutely outrageous. Absolutely no way she can remain in government whatsoever, or even remain as an MP.
I think the answer to that, Dan, is Dan 1, Labour friend 0. Let's hear another one from James and Maggie Moo. Here's his cat on Lucy Powell.
Hi, Peter. James, Maggie Moo, London. This Lucy Powell thing, Wes on there, it was like he was reading up the script. I see him on a couple of channels, so it's saying, yeah. They got their self, well, on 2525, they got a good old kick in, didn't they? And they still haven't learned Labour, have they? When are they going to do something about the rape gangs? It's been on Channel 4 now. You know, they can't even, when we're going to protect our children and our women, we can't even get single-sex spaces for our women. Come on, Labour, pull your socks up or do one.
Well, James, I think we are going to get those single-sex spaces. The Supreme Court has had that ruling. There is some reaction to it. And, of course, policies have changed. They've changed in the FA. Do you think the FA really wanted to change their policy? No, they didn't. They had to because of the law, because they thought they'd be sued. James, thanks for your thoughts there, and all the best to you. And indeed, Maggie Moo the cat. Michael in Norfolk says, previously Lucy Powell has shown herself up with caustic remarks. If she doesn't have the moral courage to resign, Starmer must get rid of her. Don't hold your breath. That's Michael in Norfolk there. Sally says, hi Peter, I appreciate your view on abortion, but what about pregnancies from rape or violent relationships? Sally, listen, as I say, abortions happen. I don't want them to happen. If there is incest, if there's rape, if there's a violent relationship, I totally understand why people want to have abortions. I'm not condemning people for having abortions. I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm simply saying that I would rather that abortions didn't happen. I would also rather that rape, violent relationships and incest didn't happen as well. So we're on the same page, Sally, certainly. And I'm not being horrible about people who have abortions. I just wish they didn't exist. I wish people had used protection if they can. And those circumstances you talk about, rape, violent relationships, incest, certainly, listen, I've no problem with that. And I reiterate the point that those things will happen. And also through consensual relationships, unplanned pregnancies will happen. I don't want abortions to happen, but they will happen, and that's why they need to be legal, safe and medically done. That is the point on that I would make, and that's why abortion has to be legal in our society, because if it isn't, they're still going to happen and people are going to die as a result. So, Sally, I don't think we're too far away from one another on that, but that's a very reasonable point to raise, and I thank you for it. Kelvin has a voice note on Lucy Powell.
Morning. On Lucy Powell. So it's okay, is it? She's apologised and that's all right. You know, we've got a woman locked up who put a comment on Facebook and got, was it 36 months or something? I don't know her name, but isn't it time she was let out? If it's good enough for the Labour MPs to say, I'm sorry and don't mean it, that woman said she was sorry, she deleted the post and she still got jail time. How bloody ridiculous. So you should let it out. And anybody else that's been locked up for, you know, putting tweets up on Facebook, if they deleted them and apologised, let them out. Otherwise, lock her up. Bye.
Calvin, thanks. I don't think Lucy Powell should go to prison. I think you're talking about Lucy Connolly there, who was in prison for 31 months. Now, there are different implications to that, but certainly I don't think she should have been in prison for 31 months. I think she should have got a fine or a suspended sentence for what she said. And as you say, she deleted that Facebook post later on. Sylvia and Milton Keynes on Lucy Powell.
Hello, Peter. Great show as always. Lucy Powell, who downplayed the rape gangs, did not make a mistake. That's what she really thinks. Claptrap think that she did just not go through the MP thought process. Do none of them have children? Don't they care? I really, really just cannot get my head round all this.
One more voice note for the meantime. Karen on Lucy Powell, please.
Hi, Peter. I cannot tell you how disgusted I feel with Lucy Powell's comments. That dog whistle, I mean, it's just awful. How dare they? How dismissive and just condescending. These poor girls and boys, I can imagine, are probably being raped as well. Maybe they'll come forward in the future. But these poor girls had their whole childhoods snatched away, stolen. They were traumatised, and some even died. We mustn't forget that. But some girls were actually murdered. Now, these people need to be brought to justice, and I mean all of them, and the people in local government and those who turned a blind eye from other agencies, because there were lots of other agencies involved. But for some reason, Labour want to bury this scandal, so maybe it goes a little bit higher than we realise.
Karen, thank you for your thoughts on that. Leslie says, unbelievable that Streeting and other Labour commentators are defending the indefensible today. In fairness to Wes Streeting, he did say he was sorry. He said it shouldn't have happened, and Lucy Powell has apologised. But Lisa's not convinced. She says Lucy Powell's mask slipped when she said what she really thought. Steve is in Leeds. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Steve, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I was listening to you earlier, Peter, and I think that the indication of how the government feels about these girls is the fact that they've cancelled this compensation scheme for victims of sexual abuse.
And this was my point, Steve. This was my point to Wes Streeting earlier. We see them by what they say and by what they do. And you're referring to that Sky News story earlier on about this compensation scheme. One of the recommendations of the report that was put out, they say, let's look at the inquiry that's been done previously. Let's look at the recommendations. Let's implement them. Well, that's one they're not implementing.
Well, not only that, Peter, you've got to think of the implications for the post office scandal and for the infected blood scandal, where they still haven't paid out the compensation. So, compensations, the money's about choice.
Yeah.
You know, and what he says, the government's saying we're more than happy to pay £6 billion a year to keep migrants in hotels, some of whom may even commit sexual crimes.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to get Centrica to hire 7,000 houses at a cost of another £6 billion. We're more than happy to put $8 billion into Ed Miliband's mad scheme, but when it comes to actually paying compensation for the mistakes of government, whether it's the rape gangs, whether it's the post office, there's no money. And you may as well put at the end of every one of those statements, vote reform. Every time the government comes on, I feel like saying at the end of it, Keir Starmer should say, I can't help the pensioners, vote reform. I can't do anything about the school fees. Vote reform.
And the thing is, Steve, we
for reform,
and we know that he can do something about those, and he's choosing not to.
Well, you said it yourself. He chose to spend £700 million in Scunthorpe. They found it within a week.
Yeah.
£700 million for a programme that's against the net value thing.
Yeah.
Net
zero. Yeah.
And they found it within a week. Yeah, Parliament can do things. They found the money for the courts and the prisons for all those people in Southport to go to prison, 300 of them, within a week.
Steve, superb call. I've got to move on because I'm going to crash the news and I want to get Jackie in. But before then, I want to play a quick voice note from Jonathan on the Wes Streeting interview.
This is Jonathan here. Great interview with Wes Streeting this morning. And I like to see politicians put on the spot, especially vis-a-vis statistics of the NHS. His performance was lamentable, frankly. And he's been touted as a future Labour leader. I don't think he's going to be top of the list after that performance.
Jonathan, thank you for that. Jackie's in Oldham. Jackie, we have literally about a minute. What point would you like to make?
It was a car crash interview. Well done, Peter, for holding into account. Having worked in the NHS for 23 years and managed waiting lists, I can honestly say that you can reduce a waiting list without even operating on one single person. He wasn't in control of his brief. He didn't know the information, and this is the calibre of people we've got running the country.
How do you change a waiting list? How do you sort out a waiting list without operating on a single patient?
You just triage the waiting list. Some people will have unfortunately passed away. Some people will have recovered. Some people won't want the operation anymore.
Okay.
So you can reduce the waiting list very, very simply. He never said how many operations had actually come off that waiting list. That is the factor.
Jackie, your council election didn't happen this time, did it?
No.
But you're standing, is it next year in Oldham?
Yes.
Okay, well, listen, we'll talk more about that on some future occasion. Jackie, thanks for your thoughts on that. Sorry it was so brief, but we're going to crash the news. If you're affected by anything that we're talking